Chapter 701, Materialization of Concept. A Grade 3 spirit weapon that provides an amplification of 70%. The spectating area all the Zhang clan higher-ups were seated at was deathly silent. After a short moment, the group of Zhang clan higher-ups looked at the Zhang clan's patriarch. Patriarch, the Grade 3 spirit weapon in the possession of the eldest young master is. I don't know either. Patriarch Zhang shook his head slightly stiffly, his gaze never left Zhang Shouyang's spirit weapon gourd, and his heart was filled with shock. Where did my eldest son obtain this spirit weapon? In terms of amplification, even the Grade 3 spirit weapon in the possession of the Darkin dynasty's imperial family is probably far inferior to this spirit weapon. Another Grade 3 spirit weapon that provides an amplification of 70%. The pupils of Shang Ying who sat by King Yong's side constricted, and for a time, he couldn't refrain from sending a voice transmission to ask the violet-clothed young man in the distant sky. Brother Ling Tian, Zhang Shouyang's spirit weapon. Pavilion Master Shang, you've guessed correctly. This Grade 3 spirit weapon in the hands of Big Brother Zhang was personally refined by the Grade 3 weapons craftsman behind me. When he heard Shang Ying's voice transmission, he even didn't turn around to look at Shang Ying before being able to guess Shang Ying's thoughts. As expected, although Shang Ying had indeed guessed so earlier, now that he heard Duan Ling Tian admit it himself, Shang Ying couldn't help but be greatly shocked in his heart. From this, Shang Ying realized a problem, and it was that so long as the Grade 3 weapons craftsmen behind Duan Ling Tian were to refine a spirit weapon, practically all the spirit weapons refined were top grade amongst the top grade. The Grade 3 spirit whip in Feng Tian Wu's possession was capable of providing an amplification of 70%. The Grade 3 spirit weapon gourd in Zhang Shouyang's possession was capable of providing an amplification of 70%. Besides that, when he became acquainted with Duan Ling Tian all those years ago, it was because Duan Ling Tian had placed a Grade 4 spirit sword in their treasure-gathering pavilion, a Grade 4 spirit sword that could provide an amplification of 60%. Exactly what sort of existence is that weapons craftsman? At this moment, Shang Ying was even more curious about the weapons craftsman behind Duan Ling Tian. As for the other people in the surroundings of the cage battle arena, all of them were surprised. This is the 4th Grade 3 spirit weapon that has appeared today. I thought that Zhang Shouyang would lose to Yi Xiao, yet I never imagined that he would withdraw a Grade 3 spirit weapon. Yeah, Zhang Shouyang who possesses a Grade 3 spirit weapon has completely surpassed Yi Xiao in terms of strength. The scene before them caused the group of spectators to feel that a turn in the road had appeared. Bang! Another enormous bang sounded out, and it was caused because Zhang Shouyang's wine gourd was smashed out once again by him after it returned to him, causing it to collide with the crescent moon controlled by Yi Xiao. After a few head-on collisions, Zhang Shouyang's expression remained unchanged, whereas Yi Xiao's countenance seemed pale. Zhang Shouyang, with a raise of his hand, Yi Xiao's crescent moon flashed back to return into his hand. I truly never imagined that after not seeing you for so many years, you actually have obtained such fortune to obtain a Grade 3 spirit weapon like this. Originally, as far as he was concerned, it was completely sufficient to crush Zhang Shouyang with the 2 types of concept he'd comprehended. But out of his expectations, Zhang Shouyang actually possessed a Grade 3 spirit weapon, and it was a Grade 3 spirit weapon that was capable of providing an amplification of 70%. After numerous head-on collisions, he felt a wave of powerlessness in his heart. You're able to comprehend 2 types of concept, so why can't I possess a Grade 3 spirit weapon? Zhang Shouyang spoke with a calm expression. Zhang Shouyang, since you possess this Grade 3 spirit weapon, I know I'm not a match for you, but if you didn't possess this Grade 3 spirit weapon or your strength was equivalent to me, then it would be impossible for you to defeat me. Yi Xiao spoke in a slight disgruntled tone. Is that so? Zhang Shouyang started laughing. At the same time, the origin energy on the spirit weapon gourd in his hand faintly subsided slightly. At the same time, the ancient mammoth silhouettes that were more than Yi Xiao gradually dispersed in the sky above Zhang Shouyang. 29 ancient horned dragon silhouettes coiled in the sky, and they stood facing the 29 ancient horned dragon silhouettes in the sky above Yi Xiao. What do you mean by doing this? Even though he asked like this, but Yi Xiao's eyes revealed a strand of imperceptible delight. Nothing much. Didn't you say that I'm relying on the might of my spirit weapon and relying on my strength that surpasses you to defeat you? Now, I've suppressed my strength to a similar level as yours to fight you, are you satisfied? Zhang Shouyang spoke slowly, and his expression still remained calm as if he was speaking about a matter of no importance. For a time, the surrounding crowd of spectators were in an uproar as they felt Zhang Shouyang was being careless. Zhang Shouyang, you'll regret this. A wisp of an evil smile arose in the corners of Yi Xiao's mouth as his legs slightly shook, causing him to flash towards Zhang Shouyang once again. Starfall Moonchaser. With a raise of his hand, the Grade 4 Spirit Saber in Yi Xiao's hand flashed out once more, and it transformed into a crescent moon that flashed through the sky towards Zhang Shouyang. Bang! Practically at the instant Yi Xiao attacked, Zhang Shouyang stomped onto the sky, causing the enormous brick that appeared out of thin air beneath his feet to shatter with a bang, and then it transformed into nothingness as it had completely its mission. Zhang Shouyang himself instead shot into the sky like a cannonball, and he soared up into the sky in the first possible moment. Zhang Shouyang had a solemn expression when facing the crescent moon that changed directions and headed up towards him, and he used a voice that only he himself could hear as he mumbled. Mount, Tai Suppression. Practically the instant the Zhang Shouyang finished speaking, his wine gourd directly flew up into the sky with a raise of his hand, and it started expanding. Of course, it didn't really expand, but the origin energy in the surroundings of the wine gourd had skyrocketed, and it transformed into a wine gourd that was like an enormous mountain. In the surroundings of this wine gourd condensed into form from origin energy and was like an enormous mountain, material earth and yellow energy swiftly coiled around and instantly caused the enormous wine gourd to seem as if it was real. When faced with Yi Xiao's attack, the enormous wine gourd fiercely plunged down with a speed that grew swifter and swifter. Rumble. Everywhere the enormous wine gourd passed, it gave rise to a wave of explosions in the air that sounded like thunderclaps. At the same time, everyone in the sky above the cage battle arena including Duan Lingtian felt as if the scorching sun in the horizon had been covered up by this enormous wine gourd. Before this enormous wine gourd, Yi Xiao's spirit saber that had transformed into a crescent moon seemed like an ant. What ability is this? Yi Xiao's expression became slightly grim as a bad premonition arose in his heart. Right at this instant, the enormous wine gourd fierce collided with the crescent moon that chased after Zhang Shouyang like a shadow. Bang! An enormous bang sounded out, the enormous wine gourd shook in the sky while the crescent moon was instead blasted flying, and the origin energy and concept within was instantly obliterated. Pooh! Yi Xiao's origin energy had always been connected with the Grade 3 Spirit Saber via his martial skill, Starfall Moonchaser, and not that everything on the Spirit Saber was obliterated, it caused him to suffer from a backlash as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Right when Yi Xiao had once again held the Grade 4 Spirit Saber in his hand. Rumble. The enormous wine gourd descended towards Yi Xiao from above, and it was as if an enormous mountain was enveloping towards Yi Xiao. For a time, the surrounding area was enveloped by a shadow with Yi Xiao at the center. HMPH. Yi Xiao's gaze went slightly cold as origin energy coiled around the spirit saber in his hand, and then his two concepts emerged at his call. Swoosh. In the next moment, Yi Xiao soared into the sky and seemed to have transformed into a bolt of lightning as he moved to intercept the enormous wine gourd. Let me see how many strikes of my saber your wine gourd that's condensed into form from mere origin energy and 9th level earth concept is able to withstand. Yi Xiao shouted out coldly, and in a short moment, he'd already swung out more than a few tens of strikes with his spirit saber. Numerous narrow and long saber lights flashed out to descend onto the enormous wine gourd, and it seemed as if it smashed onto firm ground and easily penetrated into it. It wasn't long before a few hundred hideous saber marks had appeared on the bottom of the enormous wine gourd, yet the wine gourd's speed of descent didn't slow down in the slightest. How can this be possible? In the end, Yi Xiao was slightly numbed. Bang! The enormous wine gourd finally smashed onto Yi Xiao's body, and accompanied by an enormous bang, Yi Xiao swiftly fell to crash onto the cage above the cage battle arena. Yi Xiao who lay on the cage breathed heavily, and his eyes revealed slight terror as he looked at the enormous wine gourd that had stopped in midair. He was unable to wrap his head around how Zhang Shouyang achieved this. The strength Zhang Shouyang utilized was clearly similar to him, yet after Zhang Shouyang utilized his origin energy combined with 9th level earth concept to coil around the grade 3 spirit weapon wine gourd's surroundings to condense into an enormous wine gourd, it instead possessed the strength to easily crush him. Up until now, he was unable to wrap his head around what ability Zhang Shouyang had used. He was sure that this was absolutely not the might of a martial skill. It was impossible for even a high-grade Earth rank martial skill that was infinitely close to a heaven rank martial skill to be so abnormal. Zhang Shouyang is victorious. Once after the old man in the sky above the cage battle arena recovered from his shock and announced did Duan Lingtian and the group of young geniuses recover from their shock. Even though it was extremely outstanding, the martial skill Big Brother Zhang executed earlier was insufficient to allow him to instantly crush Yi Xiao. His earth concept is actually capable of forcefully condensing the origin energy that coiled around the wine gourd and had condensed into form to become an actual piece of earth. Those numerous saber lights from the hundreds of attacks Yi Xiao shot out blasted onto the enormous wine gourd, yet most of its energy had been neutralized on the way by the earth that surrounded the spirit weapon wine gourd. In the end, when it finally collided with the spirit weapon wine gourd, it already didn't possess much strength left, and it was utterly unable to affect Big Brother Zhang. Duan Lingtian couldn't help but gasp. According to the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, there was only a single possibility. The possibility was Zhang Shouyang had already touched onto the threshold of intermediate concept. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to rely on 9th level elementary concept to condense his origin energy into a real piece of earth. Materialization of concept was something only intermediate concept was capable of achieving. For example, once water concept was comprehended to the level of intermediate concept, it was even capable of condensing into real water when combined with origin energy. The fire concept was similar, it was capable of being combined with origin energy to condense real flames. No matter what concept of nature it was, so long as it touched the level of intermediate concept, then so long as the person that had comprehended the concept of nature was willing, they would be able to materialize the concept. Just like when Han Shui Nai attacked that day, when her intermediate ice concept was combined with origin energy, it could form into real snow and strong winds that swept out to directly freeze the target into a popsicle. Unknowingly, Duan Lingtian recalled the mysterious young girl. 701 Chapter 702, Bai He challenging Zishang. Looks like Zhang Clan's Zhang Shouyang has already touched onto the intermediate earth concept. With the ability he utilized earlier, it won't be long before he'll be able to officially comprehend intermediate earth concept and even break through to the void interpretation stage. There was no lack of void interpretation stage experts in the surrounding first-class spectating areas of the cage battle arena, and they saw through the ability Zhang Shouyang utilized earlier. Exactly. While similarly at the 9th level elementary concept, yet once one touches on intermediate concept, one's strength would obtain a great increase. At least, before others that possessed a similar cultivation, one would be in an undefeatable position. When facing an opponent like this, unless one's movement technique far surpasses the opponent to the point of being able to dodge the material concept executed in combination with origin energy, otherwise, it would be extremely difficult to defeat the opponent. Indeed, many spectating void interpretation stage experts spoke out with their views. Even though their voices weren't loud, yet it clearly spread throughout the deathly silent cage battle arena, and it caused everyone to hear it clearly. So that's how Zhang Shouyang has actually touched the threshold of intermediate earth concept. After he consumed a healing medicinal pill and recovered slightly, Yi Xiao soared up into the sky and looked at Zhang Shouyang with a complicated expression. He originally thought that he could defeat Zhang Shouyang today and wash away his shame. But unexpectedly, the outcome was similar to the last two times. He still lost to Zhang Shouyang. Intermediate earth concept. He looked at Zhang Shouyang with a slightly dark expression, as when he heard the discussions of the void interpretation stage experts, he understood that he wasn't a match for Zhang Shouyang. At least he wasn't a match for Zhang Shouyang now. If he exerted his full strength, his strength was even inferior to Yi Xiao, and it was utterly impossible for his movement technique to be faster than Zhang Shouyang. He suddenly noticed that he'd actually unknowingly become the one at the bottom amongst the three publicly acknowledged most outstanding young experts of the Darken Dynasty. This caused him to be slightly unable to accept this. In next to no time, Bai He's gaze moved onto Duan Lingtian, and after it flashed past Duan Lingtian, it descended onto Zishang. Fortunately, there are these two fellows to be at the bottom. In this way, even if I'm inferior to Bai He, Zhang Shouyang, and Yi Xiao, it wouldn't be too shameful. At this moment, Bai He completely didn't realize that he didn't quite understand the true strength of Duan Lingtian and Zishang. Even though the two of them had fought earlier, they'd instantly killed their enemies, and even the phenomenon of heaven and earth hadn't condensed into form before everything was already over. Amidst the waves of praise from the surroundings of the cage battle arena, Zhang Shouyang's expression remained unchanged as he moved to the side, and his gaze flashed past Duan Lingtian, Zishang, Bai Hao, and Bai He. He was extremely curious about who would be the next to enter the arena. Who will be the next to issue a challenge? Meanwhile, one of the old men looked at Duan Ling Tian's group of 4. I'll do it. A light shout sounded out as a black-clothed young man had already arrived at the central area of the sky above the cage battle arena. Presently, the person in the arena was none other than the Darken Dynasty's imperial family's second prince, Bai He. The second prince has entered the arena. I never imagined that the 3 publicly acknowledged strongest young experts of our Darken Dynasty would enter the arena so quickly. I wonder who the second prince will choose as his opponent. No matter who it is, the second prince's chances of victory are much greater. His strength isn't inferior to Zhang Shouyang and Yi Xiao. The surrounding crowd of spectators discussed animatedly. Many people praised Bai He up to the skies, and it caused Bai He himself to feel his face go slightly hot. Perhaps his strength wasn't inferior to Zhang Shouyang and Yi Xiao in the past. But now, he knew he wasn't a match for Zhang Shouyang and Yi Xiao. Of course, if he was challenged by Zhang Shouyang and Yi Xiao, he would still fight and absolutely not admit defeat directly. As the second prince of the Darken Dynasty's imperial family, he had his own arrogance and pride, so even if he wasn't a match, he would fight to the end and reveal his strength and natural talent that far exceeded ordinary young geniuses. Along with Bai He's gaze flashing past Bai Hao, Duan Ling Tian, and Zi Shang, the cage battle arena went deathly silent as everyone had held their breaths. In the end, Bai He's gaze locked onto a person. A young man that wore white clothes. Zi Shang. The person Bai He challenged was exactly Zi Shang, the former zither young master of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's 5 great young masters. This caused many people to be surprised. After all, amongst the people that Bai He could choose to challenge, 2 of the 3 people were members of the Darken Dynasty's imperial family, and they were on Bai He's side. Originally, most people thought that he would choose to challenge Duan Ling Tian. But the outcome exceeded their expectations. I've never heard of Zi Shang in the past, but his strength is extremely strong, as he killed the Dark Moon sect's head disciple, Feng Yu, with a flick of his finger. The gazes of many spectators descended onto Zi Shang. The Dark Moon sect's head disciple Feng Yu had a cultivation at the 8th level of the Void Initiation stage and had comprehended 9th level sword concept. He could be considered to be a top 8th level Void Initiation stage young genius in the Dynasty Martial competition today. But an existence like this was annihilated with a single flick of Zi Shang's fingers. Only an instant passed from when Zi Shang attacked to the point Feng Yu died, and even the phenomenon of heaven and earth hadn't had the time to condense into form, clearly showing how swiftly Zi Shang attacked and how strong his strength was. Whoosh! When faced with Bai He's challenge, Zi Shang flew out with a calm expression. Big brother. On the first-class spectating area that belonged solely to the Darken Dynasty's imperial family, Ziyan clenched her fists tightly, and her peerlessly beautiful face was mixed with slight worry. Even though she knew her older brother was a 9th level Void Initiation stage expert now, the second Prince Bai He had stepped into the 9th level of the Void Initiation stage since long ago. Don't worry, even if Zi Shang is inferior to Bai He wouldn't face any danger to his life. The black-clothed old man noticed Ziyan's anxiousness and couldn't help but smile as he consoled. Exactly. The Darken Dynasty's emperor nodded. Obviously, no matter if it was the black-clothed old man or the emperor, neither thought that Zi Shang would be able to defeat Bai He. After all, Bai He had always been an outstanding talent amongst the younger generation of the Darken Dynasty, whereas Zi Shang had only just risen swiftly. As far as they were concerned, Bai He's foundation was much more solid than Zi Shang, and if nothing unexpected happened, then Zi Shang would surely lose. Zi Shang. In the spectating area of the Darkstone Empire, Long Yun's gaze descended onto Zi Shang, and it flickered with a bright light. As a figure that was once one of the 5 great young masters like Zi Shang, Long Yun's attention towards Zi Shang wasn't inferior to Duan Ling Tian's attention to Zi Shang. He felt his own fortuitous encounters were already shocking, yet Zi Shang's fortuitous encounters seemed to be even more shocking. Exactly how strong is Zi Shang's true strength now? He was extremely curious about this. In the sky above the cage battle arena, Duan Ling Tian and the others stood far away as their gazes descended onto the 2 young men that stood in the central area of the sky above the cage battle arena. A black-clothed young man and white-clothed young man stood facing each other in the sky. Zi Shang, truthfully speaking, I was really surprised when I saw you possessed a cultivation at the 9th level of the Void Initiation stage today, but I want to tell you that even if your cultivation is equal to mine, you're bound to be the stepping stone of Bai He, for your entire lifetime. Bai He looked at Zi Shang as he provoked via voice transmission, and he obviously wanted to infuriate Zi Shang. But unfortunately, Zishang had a calm expression when facing Bai He's provocation, and he replied indifferently via voice transmission. Second prince, who will be whose stepping stone is still unknown now, but you'll know soon enough. Zishang, you're courting death. When Bai He who wanted to provoke and infuriate Zishang had then, he instantly burst into rage and then his figure flashed out to charge straight towards Zishang. In the sky above him, 12 ancient horned dragon silhouettes instantly condensed into form, and accompanying this was a 3-foot-long blade that had flowing lights revolving upon it appeared in Bai He's hand, causing another 7 ancient horned dragon silhouettes to appear in the sky above him. Grade 4 Spirit Sword. Whoosh. In the end, along with a strand of peerlessly sharp aura flickering on the 3-foot-long blade, another 9 ancient horned dragon silhouettes condensed into form and coiled down from the sky above him. It wasn't just that, there was another aura mixed within the origin energy on Bai He's sword, and it was the aura of an advanced force. 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form along with the appearance of this force. The strength of 28 ancient horned dragons and 2,000 ancient mammoths, this was Bai He's full strength. Swoosh. Bai He's speed was extremely swift, and he seemed like an arrow that left the bow to arrive before Zishang in a short moment. Die. Suddenly, Bai He's gaze went slightly cold as the grade 4 spirit sword in his hand curved in an arc and flashed out swiftly. The instant that Bai He struck out. Swish, 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 swish. A wave of sword howls resounded out, and they rose and fell continuously. It was the grade 4 spirit sword in Bai He's hand that had condensed 10 sword lights condensed into form from origin energy that appeared out of an air from all directions before piercing towards Zishang. Everywhere the sword lights passed, the airflow in the sky surged and the light howls of the wind it emitted were slightly ear-piercing. Whoosh. When faced with Bai He's move of taking the initiative to attack, Zishang didn't have any intention of dodging, and with a raise of his left hand, a simple and unadorned zither once again appeared in his hand. Under the gazes of everyone present, Zishang's right hand abruptly raised up as raging origin energy coiled on his palm. It wasn't just that, at the center of his palm was strands of deep azure-colored energy and red-colored energy that were weaved together, and the red-colored energy seemed to be gradually strengthening. Fire drawing assistance from the force of the wind. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Practically at the same instant, Zishang moved. He slapped out his palm and the fire concept and wind concept condensed in the center of his palm instantly warped and revolved to form a deep vortex. He's going to. Duan Lingtian was slightly puzzled by Zishang's actions. Because Zishang's palm wasn't slapping out at Bai He, but was instead targeted the zither in his own hands. More precisely speaking, it was heading towards the row of zither strings on the face of the zither. Swish, 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 Right at this moment, the 10 sword lights Bai He shot out was less than a foot away from Zishang, and they were about to penetrate Zishang's body. Finally, the revolving vortex on the center of Zishang's palm crashed down to slap onto the row of zither strings on the face of the zither. Clang! Instantly, the row of zither strings trembled in unison before emitting an ear-piercing and enormous clang. 702 Chapter 703, Fire drawing assistance from the might of wind. Practically the instant the enormous clang resounded out, the eardrums of many people in the surroundings of the cage battle arena split open, and some spectators with low cultivations that were unprepared even bled from their 7 apertures and were in extremely sorry states. Luckily, I was prepared this time. Many people had hurriedly stretched out their hands to cover their ears when they saw Zishang take out the zither, and when they saw many people in their surroundings bleeding from all 7 apertures, their hearts were filled with a feeling of being fortunate. Along with Zishang's palm slapping onto the row of zither strings on the face of the zither, an enormous clang resounded. Whoosh! With the center of his palm as the center, an energy that was terrifying to the extreme instantly swept out in all directions, and it was a formidable area attack that he'd executed by combining the zither in his hand with his origin energy and concept. Besides carrying raging milky white origin energy, the extremely terrifying energy contained strands of azure energy and red-colored energy mixed within. The red-colored energy raged and skyrocketed more and more intensely, and it was actually raising by itself by relying on the azure energy. Fire drawing assistance from wind. The sudden scene before his eyes caused Duan Lingtian to be unable to help but be shocked. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian noticed that along with Zishang's palm descending onto the zither, before the phenomenon of heaven and earth could condense into form, Zishang had actually directly put away the zither in the blink of an eye, whereas, the origin energy vortex that revolved ceaselessly at the center of his palm and contained wind concept and fire concept had vanished along with the disappearance of the zither. In the sky, the phenomenon of heaven and earth that hadn't had the chance to condense had instantly dispersed. Instantly, only a single thought remained in Duan Lingtian's mind. He wouldn't be thinking that this strike of his was sufficient to defeat Bai He, right? Duan Lingtian's heart jerked as an insane thought arose in his mind. Whoosh! In next to no time, Duan Lingtian realized that he'd guessed correctly. The energy that had swept out into the surroundings after Zishang's palm descended onto the zither, had formed into an origin energy vortex that revolved ceaselessly as well, and combined with the azure and red energies, it seemed like a swiftly revolving wheel of fire and wind. Within the origin energy vortex, the red-colored energy swiftly grew under the supply of energy from the azure-colored energy. Along with the growth of the red energy, the strength contained within the origin energy vortex grew stronger and stronger, and it wasn't the slightest bit affected by Zishang's lack of further action. Bang, 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 the origin energy vortex spread out ceaselessly and carried the might of fire and wind as it suddenly shot out, causing a wave of deafening explosions of the air to resound out in the sky. It wasn't just that, besides the single sword light that was closest to Bai He, all of the other 9 sword lights that were condensed from the 3-foot-long blade in Bai He's hand were shattered by the origin energy vortex. Whoosh! After the origin energy vortex shattered the 9 sword lights, it didn't lose momentum in the slightest as it continued to sweep out in all directions and envelop Bai He. Bang! Another enormous bang sounded out, and Bai He and his sword were swept into the origin energy vortex. At this moment, even if Bai He mobilized all the origin energy within his body in time, it would still be difficult for him to resist the origin energy vortex. Under the gazes of everyone present, the spirit sword in Bai He's hand was very quickly swept flying by the origin energy vortex, and it fell onto the cage battle arena, whereas, Bai He himself was instead carried along by the origin energy vortex to take a few tens of spins, shaking him to the point his countenance was ghastly pale and blood sprayed from his mouth. If this were to continue, he would obviously die. Whoosh! Right at this moment, the 2 old men that presided over the martial competition moved at the same time. One of them saved Bai He, while the other obliterated the origin energy vortex with a raise of his hand. Even then, the origin energy vortex still carried along a wave of violent winds that swept out towards all direction, and it caused the clothes of most people to flutter. At this moment, only the sound of Bai He breathing heavily and the whistling sound of the violent winds remained. Numerous gazes descended in unison onto the white-clothed young man in the central area of the sky above the cage battle arena. Since the beginning until the end, the white-clothed young man hadn't moved in the slightest, and he stood there unmoving like a mount, with an expression that seemed like it wouldn't change even if Mt. Tai collapsed before him. Second prince has lost just like this. The spectators in the surroundings of the cage battle arena successively recovered from their shock, and all of them revealed astonishment and felt it was difficult to believe that everything they saw earlier was real. Some people even felt they were dreaming. But when they stretched out their hands to fiercely pinch their own thighs, the pain they felt seemed to tell them that they weren't dreaming. Zishang is victorious. Along with the old man in the sky above the cage battle arena speaking out, the outcome of the battle had appeared. Meanwhile, everyone was jolted awake from their shock. Too terrifying. Zishang is too terrifying. He isn't just terrifying, he's simply abnormal. It was nothing when he killed that Dark Moon sect's head disciple before the phenomenon of the heaven and earth could condense into form. After all, his opponent was only an 8th-level Void Initiation stage martial artist. But earlier, when facing the second prince, one of the 3 publicly acknowledged strongest young experts of the Darken Dynasty's younger generation, he actually defeated his opponent with a single move. Moreover, the phenomenon of heaven and earth didn't even have the time to condense into form. As the saying goes, dogs bite. Looks like these words aren't the slightest bit mistaken. The entire cage battle arena was in an uproar because Zishang had defeated Bai He with a single move. The faces of many people had even flushed red, and they were extremely excited. It was as if the one that defeated the second prince wasn't Zishang but them instead. This, in the first-class spectating area that belonged to the imperial family, the black-clothed old man was completely stunned. Zishang was his personal disciple, and logically speaking, no one would understand Zishang better than he did. But now, the skill Zishang revealed had instead caused him to feel unfamiliarity. Especially the origin energy vortex that appeared as Zishang raised his hand. It was obviously an extremely formidable martial skill, yet he'd never seen or heard of this martial skill before. Hiss. The emperor who sat by the old man's side couldn't help but gasp. Zishang is actually so strong. Perhaps Zishang's strength is even equal to Bai Hao. When he recalled the scene from before, the emperor couldn't help but be shocked in his heart. At this moment, the emperor didn't feel the slightest bit of displeasure because Zishang had defeated his son. As far as he was concerned, it was a good thing for both him and the imperial family that a young genius that was stronger than his son was able to appear in the imperial family. This meant that the members of the imperial family had the chance to go further on the stage that was the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. At the beginning, the emperor had a disappointed expression when he glanced at the distant Bai He who had a ghastly pale countenance. Subsequently, the emperor seemed to have thought of something, and he started to laugh heartily. Ha 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 ha, Zishang, you've done well. Your strength has really given me a pleasant surprise. Let's not talk about your reward for the ranking battles. I'll decide now that after the dynasty martial competition ends, no matter how your ranking is, I'll give you an extra 10,000 low-grade origin stones. The emperor's words had suppressed all the clamorous voices in the cage battle arena, and it clearly spread throughout the entire cage battle arena. For a time, the cage battle arena was deathly silent, and only the emperor's laughter remained. 10,000 low-grade origin stones. Numerous burning gazes firmly locked onto Zishang from the surroundings of the cage battle arena, and they wished for nothing more than to take his place. As expected of our darkened dynast's emperor. Not only does he not feel ashamed and angered from the second prince being defeated, he's still rewarding the person that defeated the second prince. His Majesty is wise, long live His Majesty. In next to no time, many spectators in the surroundings of the cage battle arena weren't the slightest bit stingy with their words of praise to the emperor. Thank you, Your Majesty. After Zishang heard the emperor, he was slightly shocked, and he hurriedly expressed his gratitude after recovering from his shock. Originally, even though he was mentally prepared to defeat the second prince today, he was slightly worried about the emperor's attitude. After all, the second prince was the biological son of the emperor, whereas he was only an outsider. Now it would seem that he'd overthought things. If it was said that whose expression was the most unsightly right now, then it would undoubtedly be the second prince, Bai He. After being defeated by Zishang, Bai He felt ashamed and wished for nothing more than to dig a hole in the sky to conceal himself. To think that he, the dignified second prince of the Darken dynasty, one of the 3 great young experts of the Darken dynasty's younger generation had actually lost at the hands of person of lowly birth, how could he endure this? Most importantly, he'd used voice transmission to shame and provoke Zishang on many occasions earlier. At this moment, he felt that everything he did earlier was like himself slapping his own face. Now, Zishang is probably bursting with laughter in his heart, right? Unconsciously, Bai He's body started to lightly tremble, and he was furious to the limit, yet just happened to be unable to do anything. How can Zishang possibly possess such strong strength in such a short period of time? But, at the same time that Bai He felt fearful towards the strength Zishang revealed, his heart was filled with envy. Exactly what fortuitous encounter did he obtain? Why wasn't it me that obtained that fortuitous encounter? As far as Bai He was concerned, if he obtained the fortuitous encounter Zishang obtained, then perhaps he'd have already broken through to the void interpretation stage now. He hated, he envied. Unlike Bai He's hate and envy, Duan Lingtian's eyes lightly narrowed as he looked at Zishang. I truly never imagined that Zishang possessed such a formidable strength now, especially his comprehension of wind concept and fire concept can be said to be at the highest level. As the saying goes, while amateurs watch the show, the experts watch the skill involved. Earlier, ordinary martial artists were utterly unable to notice the fire concept that was still ceaselessly growing after Zishang put away the zither, but Duan Lingtian had seen it clearly. Fire drawing assistance from the might of wind, and it grows stronger and stronger, this is basic common sense. Yet very few martial artists are really capable of comprehending fire and wind concept and using wind concept to drive the growth of fire concept. This was something that Duan Lingtian was extremely clear about from the memories of the rebirth martial emperor. Supposedly, if the method of allowing using wind to drive the growth of fire was used well, it was even possible to use wind concept to increase the fire concept's level while in battle. Duan Lingtian was extremely sure that when Zishang attacked, the fire concept had surely been improved quite a bit by the wind concept. Otherwise, it would be impossible for it to so straightforwardly defeat Bai He. Besides that, the martial skills Zishang executed earlier isn't ordinary. Needless to say, after Zishang defeated Bai He with a single move, Duan Lingtian had looked slightly more highly upon Zishang. 703 Chapter 704, Duan Lingtian is challenged. After a short moment, Zishang and Bai He both left the central area of the sky above the cage battle arena. Meanwhile, the old man spoke once more. Whoosh! Practically the instant the old man finished speaking, a figure had already flashed out. He'd arrived at the central area of the sky above the cage battle arena at the first possible moment. Yi Xiao. Instantly, the person that entered the arena drew the attention of most people. Presently, the person that entered the arena was precisely the Yi clan's eldest young master, Yi Xiao. Up until now, 2 battles had been carried out in the ranking battles for the top 6 positions. The first battle was between Yi Xiao and Zhang Shouyang, and now, Yi Xiao had once again occupied the deciding position, and it caused many people to be unable to refrain from feeling curious. Who will this Yi Xiao challenge this time? Under the gazes of everyone present, Yi Xiao's gaze directly locked onto a single person. Duan Lingtian. When he saw Yi Xiao look over and call out his name, Duan Lingtian's expression remained unchanged as he flashed out to instantly arrive in the sky above the cage battle arena to stand in confrontation with Yi Xiao. Duan Lingtian wasn't surprised that Yi Xiao challenged him. After all, he'd first taught Yi Xiao's younger brother, Yi Xiong, a lesson, then killed the second strongest young expert of the Yi clan's younger generation, Yi Lu. It was completely within reason that Yi Xiao would want to get even with him. Duan Lingtian, you possess this cultivation at such an age. Needless to say, your natural talent is extremely strong. Unfortunately, the path towards the martial Dao doesn't only rely on natural talent, it relies even more on comprehension ability. Obviously, Yi Xiao didn't think that Duan Lingtian's comprehension in concept was high. Are you lecturing me? Duan Lingtian couldn't refrain from laughing. It's still unknown if you can defeat me, yet you're already impatiently lecturing me here. It seems to be slightly improper, right? Or to say it more bluntly, do you have the qualifications? HMPH. You'll know soon enough if I have the qualifications. Yi Xiao grunted coldly as his feet shook, and then his figure flashed out with the wind to charge towards Duan Lingtian. In his hands, the spirit saber then was like a crescent moon had appeared out of thin air, and origin energy raged on it as concept followed the origin energy like a shadow, revealing his strength. Starfall Moonchaser. After Yi Xiao arrived nearby Duan Lingtian, the spirit saber in his hand shook with a raise of his hand, and he was about to swing it down towards Duan Lingtian. Practically the instant Yi Xiao raised his hand, Duan Lingtian moved. Whirlwind. In the eyes of many martial artists with low cultivations, Duan Lingtian had instantly vanished on the spot, whereas, martial artists with deep cultivations were instead able to see that Duan Lingtian seemed to have transformed into a gale that had already approached Yi Xiao before Yi Xiao swung his saber out. In that instant, a wave of ear-piercing sounds of wind and lightning suddenly resounded out, and then it stopped abruptly. Swish. Subsequently, a slight howl of the sword instantly sounded out as well, and then it instantly died down. Besides people with deep cultivations, practically everyone else was unable to hear this howl of the sword. What a swift sword strike! The pupils of many martial artists with deep cultivations couldn't help but constrict when they saw the violet sword light that flashed in Duan Lingtian's hand. Meanwhile, Yi Xiao's grade 4 spirit saber had already flashed out towards Duan Lingtian, who was extremely close to him, and it seemed to have transformed into a crescent moon that shot out with full fury. Duan Lingtian seemed as if he was prepared since long ago, and at the moment before Yi Xiao had swung out with his sword, Duan Lingtian had moved unhurriedly to the side. In the eyes of the group of people with deep cultivations, Duan Lingtian had completed the actions of swinging his sword and sheathing it in the blink of an eye, whereas, at the instant he sheathed his sword, he seemed as if he possessed foresight and dodged to the side. When Yi Xiao saw the crescent moon that flashed out and was powered by the group of stars lost its target, his eyes squinted, and then he wanted to control the crescent moon to change directions and chase after Duan Lingtian. You've already lost. An extremely indifferent voice suddenly sounded out, and it was Duan Lingtian that spoke slowly. I've lost. Yi Xiao couldn't help but be stunned when he heard Duan Lingtian. After he noticed the numerous strange gazes that shot at him from the surroundings, a bad premonition arose within his heart, and he hurriedly looked at Duan Lingtian after withdrawing his spirit saber and said in a low voice, "What do you mean by this?" Duan Lingtian didn't answer Yi Xiao, and his gaze moved slightly down to descend onto Yi Xiao's throat. A shallow mark of a sword had appeared on Yi Xiao's throat, and a clear and dazzling mark of blood that was beautiful and resplendent appeared there. When he noticed where Duan Lingtian's gaze was looking at, Yi Xiao faintly sensed his throat feeling slightly cold, and when he stretched out his hand to wipe his throat, he saw that his hand was covered in dazzling fresh blood. How could this be possible? Yi Xiao looked at Duan Lingtian with a stunned gaze and an expression of disbelief. Now, he was able to guess that Duan Lingtian had already attacked the instant Duan Lingtian approached him. Earlier, there was a moment that he felt a cold wind blow past his throat, and at the beginning, he thought it was the wind in the air had suddenly become cold, but when he thought about it now, he knew it was caused by the blade of Duan Lingtian's sword. Fast, too fast. Never had Yi Xiao imagined that Duan Lingtian's speed of striking with the sword was so fast, to the point that he didn't even have the time to react before his throat was sliced. At the same time, Yi Xiao broke out in cold sweat. He could imagine that if Duan Lingtian didn't show mercy earlier, he would have already been killed by Duan Lingtian with a single slit of the throat. Duan Lingtian's methods of slitting the throat with a single strike was something that he'd witnessed earlier. Their Yi clan's young genius, Yi Lu, had his throat slit by Duan Lingtian with a single strike. Now do you still think that you have the qualifications to lecture me? Duan Lingtian stood at the side as he looked at Yi Xiao with a calm expression, and his gaze contained no discernible feelings. I admit that I indeed have no qualifications to lecture you, but I still have to thank you for showing mercy. Yi Xiao took a deep breath, and his expression flickered before finally squeezing out a trace of a smile in the end. As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Xiao left the central area of the sky above the cage battle arena. Yi Xiao's character isn't bad. He isn't like his younger brother. When he saw Yi Xiao admit defeat so readily, it caused Duan Lingtian to be unable to help but be surprised. Duan Lingtian is victorious. Meanwhile, the old man in the sky above the cage battle arena announced. At this moment, the two old men that were in charge of presiding over the martial competition looked at Duan Lingtian with slightly complicated gazes. This violet-clothed young man had entered into their field of vision when they came over with the emperor earlier. This was a person that dared be disrespectful to their darkened dynasty's emperor. Originally, they thought that the violet-clothed young man was relying on his status as the son-in-law of Feng Wudao to dare be so unbridled, but now they didn't think like this. With the natural talent and comprehension ability the violet-clothed young man revealed, he did indeed possess the ability to be arrogant. How can Duan Lingtian possibly be so strong? After Yi Xiao returned to the first-class spectating area the Yi clan members were seated at, his second brother Yi Zhang's expression was extremely unsightly as he looked at the violet-clothed young man that stood in the sky, and his eyes were filled with unwillingness. Don't go offend Duan Lingtian again in the future. I, and our Yi clan can't afford to offend him. Yi Xiao glanced at Yi Xiao with a gaze of warning, and he obviously didn't speak these words only for Yi Xiang. Presently, the Yi clan's patriarch and all the Yi clan higher-ups present laughed bitterly and helplessly. They knew that Yi Xiao was right. Not to mention Duan Lingtian's own terrifying natural talent and comprehension ability, just his background was sufficient to make their Yi clan be afraid. So it turns out that big brother Duan concealed so much strength when fighting me that day. Even the number one expert in the Yi clan's younger generation, Yi Xiao, can't withstand a single move of his. After Feng Tianwu received the spatial ring brought over by a worker of the cage battle arena, she looked at Duan Lingtian from afar as she muttered. From Duan Lingtian moving to him attacking, and then dodging to the side. All of this happened in the blink of an eye, and the phenomenon of heaven and earth in the sky didn't even have the time to condense into form. It could be known from this that the speed Duan Lingtian attacked with had already attained an extremely shocking degree. What a kid, he actually concealed his strength so deeply. Feng Wudao's gaze lit up, and a rare smile appeared on his face. Young miss, how many origin stones did you earn for brother Duan this time? Elder Kong looked at Feng Tianwu and asked with a smile. 8,000 plus. Feng Tianwu recovered from her shock, and her absolutely beautiful face bloomed into a brilliant smile. Not bad, but you won't have such a good opportunity next time. Elder Kong nodded. Feng Tianwu deeply agreed with Elder Kong's words, as the reason she was able to earn so much this time was because the members of the cage battle arena didn't know Duan Lingtian's exact cultivation. It was precisely because of this that in the battle between Duan Lingtian and Yi Xiao, Duan Lingtian's odds would be much higher than Yi Xiao. Whereas after this battle, it would obviously be impossible for Duan Lingtian's odds to be so high. After all, he was an existence that was capable of defeating Yi Xiao in a single move. Duan Lingtian's strength is actually so strong, he's able to defeat Yi Xiao in a single move, so doesn't that mean that he's also capable of defeating Bai He in a single move? The emperor's brows raised, and he was slightly surprised. At this moment, he seemed to have completely forgotten about Duan Lingtian's disrespect towards him at the beginning. He's worthy of being Zishang's rival. With his strength, he has the qualifications to become Zishang's opponent. The black-clothed old man had a serious expression. How can this be possible? How can this Duan Lingtian possibly possess such a terrifying strength? The beautiful face of Ziyan who sat at the side of the old man was covered in disbelief, and slight worry for her older brother, Zishang, was contained between her brows. She knew clearly in her heart that the battle between her brother, Zishang, and Duan Lingtian was unavoidable today. Moreover, during these past few years, the motivation that drove her brother, Zishang, was undoubtedly Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian. At the same time that Zishang himself revealed surprise as he looked at Duan Lingtian now, he revealed burning battle intent. Never had I expected that you possessed such formidable strength as well, but it's good this way. Otherwise, it would be boring if you were too weak. Impossible, impossible, how old is he? How can he possibly possess such a formidable strength? After Bai He who was defeated by Zishang earlier had consumed a healing medicinal pill, his injuries had already completely healed, but after he witnessed Duan Lingtian's strength now, his eyes were filled with a sheen of disbelief. At the beginning, after he witnessed the strength of Yi Xiao and Zhang Shouyang, he knew clearly in his heart that he wasn't a match for Yi Xiao and Zhang Shouyang. On the other hand, Bai Hao was his cousin brother. Even though Bai Hao had been wandering outside the dynasty for many years, Bai Hao had sparred with him some time ago, and he knew he was far from being a match for Bai Hao. 704 Chapter 705, Bai Hao entering the arena. At that time, Bai He had taken Duan Lingtian and Zishang to be his stepping stones for today. But now amongst the two people that he'd taken to be stepping stones, one had defeated him with a single move, whereas, the other defeated Yi Xiao, who was stronger than him, with a single move. How could he accept this? Could it be that I really am going to be ranked 6th? The corners of Bai He's mouth were filled with bitterness, and his eyes were filled with unwillingness as his heart became warped and frenzied. Duan Lingtian surely acquired repeated fortuitous encounters to possess this cultivation at such an age. Why? Why can Duan Lingtian and Zishang obtain fortuitous encounters, yet I, Bai He, have none? I hate. The heavens are unfair. The heavens are unfair. At this moment, Bai He seemed to have completely forgotten that his birth was thousands of times better than Duan Lingtian and Zishang. He was the son of the Darkin dynasty's emperor, the respected second prince of the Darkin dynasty who received the reverence of all, whereas Duan Lingtian and Zishang were only from a tiny imperial kingdom. It was even to the extent that Duan Lingtian was even from a tiny kingdom beneath an imperial kingdom, and it was even inferior to Zishang. Duan Lingtian, nice. Too formidable, Meanwhile, the group of young geniuses of the Darkstone dynasty praised excitedly in succession. The young geniuses of the other empires were influenced by this as well. Who said that there aren't experts amongst us who came from the empires? The Darkstone Empire's Duan Lingtian used a single move to defeat the young expert of the Darkin dynasty that has become famous for many years, Yi Xiao. Duan Lingtian, you can do it. All of us that are similarly from the various empires are proud of you. Right, we're proud of you. We hope you can aim your sword for first place. Aim your sword for first. In the 9 second-class spectating areas, the young geniuses of the various empires were in an uproar. Presently, amongst the 6 9th level void initiation stage young geniuses that stood in the sky above the cage battle arena, only Duan Lingtian came from an empire and was a young genius recommended by an empire. In the eyes of the young geniuses of the various empires, at this moment, Duan Lingtian was representing the honor of all of the young geniuses from the various empires. In the sky above the cage battle arena, Duan Lingtian withdrew to the side. Brother Lingtian, even though I was mentally prepared long ago that you'd be able to surpass me sooner or later, but never had I imagined that your strength has already surpassed me in the dynasty martial competition today. Zhang Shouyang looked at Duan Lingtian with a complicated gaze as he sighed via voice transmission. Big brother Zhang, you don't have to belittle yourself, your earth concept is much stronger than the concept I've comprehended, as it can already materialize. Duan Lingtian shook his head. So what if it can materialize? It's still only a 9th level elementary concept. It's fine if I'm facing someone with a strength that's equal or inferior to me, but if I encounter a freak like you, just your speed already far surpasses me. So even if my Earth concept can materialize, it won't be of any effect to you. Zhang Shouyang spoke truthfully. No matter what, as things are now, besides Bai Hai who hasn't fought, you'll surely the first amongst the 5 of us to break through to the void interpretation stage. Said Duan Lingtian. He was extremely confident of Zhang Shouyang in this matter. Once Zhang Shouyang broke through to the void interpretation stage, it would be sufficient for Zhang Shouyang to easily crush all of them who hadn't broken through to the void interpretation stage. I hope so. Zhang Shouyang nodded. Next. Meanwhile, the old man spoke out once more. At this moment, no one made a move and the atmosphere became slightly strange. Presently, the gazes of most people had descended onto the white-colored figure in the sky above the cage battle arena, and it wasn't Zisheng but Bai Hao. Bai Hao was recommended by the imperial family and was the person that presided over the martial competition yesterday, and to most of the people present, he was covered in mysteriousness. Up until now, only he hadn't fought yet amongst the 6 young geniuses that were competing in the ranking battles for the top 6. The other 5 9th-level void initiation stage young geniuses, including Duan Lingtian, had now looked over at Bai Hao in unison as they awaited Bai Hao's entrance into the arena. Whoosh! Finally, under the gazes of everyone present, Bai Hao flashed out to arrive at the central area of the sky above the cage battle arena. Bai Hao has entered the arena. I wonder who he will choose to be his opponent. We'll know soon enough. Numerous gazes constantly stayed on Bai Hao. In the end, Bai Hao chose his opponent, Zhang Shouyang. Zhang Shouyang was stunned he heard himself being challenged by Bai Hao, and then he flashed out to stand in confrontation with Bai Hao. In his hand, the wine gourd appeared out of thin air before he started pouring wine down his throat. After a short moment, Zhang Shouyang put down the wine gourd and looked at Zhang Shouyang with a serious expression. Obviously, he realized that Bai Hao wasn't simple. Even though Bai Hao attacked once yesterday, it was only briefly, but even in that brief moment, besides revealing a cultivation at the 9th level of the void initiation stage, he also revealed a 9th level fire concept. Duan Lingtian's gaze descended onto Bai Hao as his expression became slightly serious. He kept having the feeling that when Bai Hao attacked yesterday, besides not utilizing a spirit weapon, Bai Hao might have still been holding back. Let's begin. Bai Hao spoke indifferently, whereas, at practically the instant he finished speaking, Zhang Shouyang moved. Bang! Zhang Shouyang raised his right leg before fiercely stomping it out, smashing the enormous brick that appeared out of thin air beneath his feet into pieces before his entire body relied on this repulsive force to charge towards Bai Hao like a cannonball. Everywhere Zhang Shouyang passed, the howls of the wind resounded out as explosions of air rose and fell without end. Whoosh! Under the gazes of everyone present, Zhang Shouyang held tightly onto his wine gourd with a raise of his hand, and then he pulled his shoulders backwards, causing his entire body to seem like a heavy bow. Along with origin energy blooming out from Zhang Shouyang's hand and gushing into the wine gourd, earth concept followed out like a shadow, causing the surface of the wine gourd to be covered in a layer of earth and yellow clothes. Ha! As Zhang Shouyang shouted out explosively, his body that had been pulled into a bow abruptly straightened out, and the wine gourd in his hand flew out with a swish, and it seemed to have transformed into an earthen yellow-colored bolt of lightning that shot towards Bai Hao. At the same time, Zhang Shouyang flashed out and followed close behind the wine gourd. In the sky, ancient horned dragon silhouettes condensed into form successively and dashed out along with Zhang Shouyang, seeming to be telling everyone in the surroundings that he'd already exerted his full strength. One wine gourd, one man, one ahead while the other behind, flashing towards Bai Hao. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian saw a 7-foot-long spear appear out of thin air in Bai Hao's hand and flowing lightly revolved around the spear, causing one to know with a single glance that it wasn't an ordinary spear. Grade 3 spirit weapon. As a genuine Grade 3 weapons craftsman, Duan Lingtian recognized the grade of the spear in Bai Hao's hand with a single glance. Flame Cloud Spear. Bai He's pupils constricted, and his expression was slightly unsightly, as envy filled the depths of his gaze. He was able to recognize that the Grade 3 spirit weapon in Bai Hao's hand was precisely the sole Grade 3 spirit weapon possessed by the Darken Dynasty's imperial family, and it was grasped in the hand of that existence of the imperial family. Yesterday, he's gone to see his father to ask his imperial father to assist him in borrowing this Grade 3 spirit spear, yet he was refused by his imperial father. Never had he imagined that the Grade 3 spirit spear he was unable to borrow had appeared in Bai Hao's possession today. As far as he was concerned, if he possessed this grade 3 spirit spear to rely on today, then perhaps he didn't have to be afraid of Zhang Shouyang and Yi Xiao, and at the same time, he wouldn't have lost at the hands of Zishang within a single move. He envied. He hated. Why was this grade 3 spirit spear lent to Bai Hao, but not to me? Bai Hao uses spears. When he saw Bai Hao maintaining a calm expression even when facing the wine gourd that approached menacingly, Duan Lingtian's expression became serious. Finally, Bai Hao moved under Duan Lingtian's gaze. Bai Hao held the spear with a single hand as origin energy skyrocketed on his body, and then strands of material red-colored energy emerged from his body. When the red-colored energy covered his origin energy shook abruptly before transforming completely crimson-red. For a time, Bai Hao and his spear were within a raging red-colored sea of flames. Materialization of concept again. When he saw Bai Hao, who was completely covered in the red-colored flames, not suffer the slightest bit of injury, the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth couldn't help but twitch. Bai Hao's fire concept had actually already touched the threshold of intermediate concept, and it wasn't inferior to Zhang Shouyang's earth concept. Swoosh. Finally, Bai Hao moved. He flashed out as if he was a large fireball that tore through the sky, and it caused the sky to be covered in a scorching aura that moved to directly intercept the enormous wine gourd that Zhang Shouyang smashed out. Suddenly, Bai Hao held the spear with both hands before raising it up above his head. Whoosh! In the next moment, an ear-piercing howl of the wind sounded out instantly, and it was like thunder that reverberated in the ears of all. Bai Hao had swung down the spirit spear he raised up to smash towards Zhang Shouyang, whereas, the spear in his hand seemed to have transformed into a rod at this moment. Bang! The spirit spear in Bai Hao's hand descended to fiercely smash onto the wine gourd that flashed directly towards him, and the scorching flames swept out to instantly collapse the material, earth, on the surface of the wine gourd. It wasn't just that. After his spirit spear shattered the material earth concept on the surroundings of the wine gourd, it continued to descend onto the wine gourd, causing another enormous bang to sound out, and the wine gourd was directly blasted flying. Bang! The wine gourd that was blasted flying collided with Zhang Shouyang, who was following behind it, causing Zhang Shouyang to be knocked flying. Pooh! Zhang Shouyang was hit by the wine gourd without the slightest preparation, causing his face to go ghastly white as he spat out a mouthful of blood, and he was only capable of stopping his flying body after being knocked flying for a period of distance. Bai Hao, on the other hand, had already put away the grade 3 spirit spear in his hand, and the flames on his body died out along with this. You aren't a match for me. Bai Hao gazed calmly at Zhang Shouyang as he spoke indifferently. Zhang Shouyang didn't deny what Bai Hao said, and he withdrew to the side after putting away his wine gourd. Bai Hao is victorious. Meanwhile, one of the old men recovered from his shock and announced the results, whereas, the cage battle arena was filled with clamorous noise now. What happened earlier? The imperial family's Bai Hao used that spirit spear as a rod, and with a swing of his rod, he blasted Zhang Shouyang's wine gourd flying. Not only did he blast the wine gourd flying, he even injured Zhang Shouyang. I only saw the ancient horned dragon silhouettes that appeared in the sky when Zhang Shouyang attacked, but I didn't see it clearly when Bai Hao attacked. I didn't see it clearly either. 705 Chapter 706, still a single move. Bai Hao is similar to Duan Lingtian and Ziyi Shang. He defeated his opponent with a single move. From the beginning until the end, the phenomenon of the heaven and earth utterly had no chance of condensing into form. I feel that Bai Hao's strength is equal to Duan Lingtian and Ziyi Shang, and it surpasses the other three young geniuses in all aspects. Not only that, when Bai Hao attacked, his fire concept combined with origin energy actually transformed into real flames. He's just like Zhang Shouyang, and is an existence that's halfway into the void interpretation stage. His strength is even stronger than Zhang Shouyang. The crowd in the surroundings of the cage battle arena discussed animatedly. Most of the people present, including Duan Lingtian, were shocked by Bai Hao's strength. Big brother Zhang, when Bai Hao raised the spirit spear and smashed it out towards your spirit weapon gourd, did it contain another concept? Duan Lingtian couldn't refrain from asking Zhang Shouyang via voice transmission. Because Bai Hao had attacked too swiftly, the phenomenon of heaven and earth hadn't had the time to condense into form, and coupled with the material fire concept blocking Duan Lingtian's field of vision, Duan Lingtian didn't notice the second concept. Of course, Duan Lingtian not noticing it didn't mean that Zhang Shouyang, who faced the attack, didn't notice it as well. Exactly. Even though Zhang Shouyang had lost at the hands of Bai Hao, he wasn't dejected in the slightest. Besides fire concept, he also used rod concept. According to my conjecture, his rod concept ought to be at least at the second level. Rod concept, second level and above. Duan Lingtian looked at Bai Hao with slight surprise when he heard this. Never had he imagined that Bai Hao's strength was actually so strong. Ninth level fire concept and rod concept at the second level or above. When both are combined, they're already not inferior to my 8th level wind concept and 3rd level lightning concept. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. Even though I've also comprehended 1st level earth concept as well, who knows if his rod concept is only at the 2nd level. Perhaps it's at the 3rd level, and even the 4th level might be possible. After all, Zhang Shouyang had only roughly estimated that Bai Hao's rod concept was at the 2nd level or above, and he wasn't able to be sure of exactly how strong it was. Bai Hao had easily obtained the victory in his battle between Zhang Shouyang, and it had shocked many people in the cage battle arena. As it is now, amongst the 6 young geniuses, Duan Lingtian, Zishang, and Bai Hao possess the strongest strength, the other 3 people are slightly inferior. If nothing unexpected happens, then the top 3 during the ranking battles today will probably be Duan Lingtian, Zishang, and Bai Hao. No matter if it is Duan Lingtian, Bai Hao, or Zishang, up until now, they attacked so swiftly that the phenomenon of heaven and earth only flashed briefly, and we utterly don't know exactly how their strengths are. Perhaps, only when the 3 of them face each other would we be able to confirm their exact strength. Truly a cause for anticipation. The sounds of discussion rose and fell in the surroundings of the cage battle arena, and many people were looking forward to the battle between Duan Lingtian, Zishang, and Bai Hao. Bai Hao. Zishang looked at Bai Hao, who'd withdrawn to the side, and his eyes abruptly narrowed as he thought in his heart. I originally thought that my opponent today was probably only Duan Lingtian, yet never had I imagined that Bai Hao's strength was so strong, and he already possesses the qualifications to be my opponent. But, no matter if it's Duan Lingtian or Bai Hao, they're bound to be the stepping stone of Zishang. I, Zishang, am determined to obtain 1st place in the dynasty martial competition. Unknowingly, Zishang's eyes were filled with confidence, and it was confidence towards his own strength. In next to no time, along with the discussions in the surroundings of the cage battle arena calming down, the old man spoke once more. At the same time, Zishang moved and arrived at the central area of the sky above the cage battle arena at the first possible moment. It's Zishang. Zishang was actually so impatient to enter the arena. I wonder if he will choose Duan Lingtian or Bai Hao as his opponent. If he chooses Duan Lingtian or Bai Hao, then this battle will surely be extremely interesting. The atmosphere of the cage battle arena that had slightly calmed down was once again in an uproar. But unfortunately, Zishang didn't choose Duan Lingtian or Bai Hao. His gaze locked onto his target at the first possible moment. Yi Xiao, will you admit defeat yourself, or should I defeat you myself? Then person Zishang challenged was exactly the Yi clan's eldest young master, Yi Xiao. Presently, Yi Xiao was sitting at the first-class spectating area that the Yi clan members were seated at, and he flew out when challenged by Zishang. If you have the strength, then defeat me. Don't even dream about making me admit defeat. Yi Xiao's words displayed his proud and unyielding character. As the eldest young master of the Yi clan, the #1 expert of the Yi clan's younger generation, he had his pride and dignity that were more important than his life, and he wouldn't allow another to trample on it. Very good. Zishang stood in confrontation with Yi Xiao as he nodded with satisfaction. Since it's like this, then I'll defeat you with my own 2 hands. HMPH. Yi Xiao grunted coldly, and he once again chose to attack first and seize the initiative. Unfortunately for him, his speed was swift, but Zishang's speed was swifter. Along with a zither appearing out of thin air in Zishang's hand, he raised his hand and origin energy flickered on the tips of 2 of his fingers before transforming into 2 tiny vortexes that ceaselessly revolved and warped. Within these 2 tiny vortexes, wind concept and fire concept followed like shadows as fire drew assistance from the might of wind and gradually strengthened the fire concept. In the next moment, Zishang's hand descended swiftly like a bolt of lightning, and his fingers smashed onto 2 zither strings. Cover your ears. Along with the appearance of the zither in Zishang's hands, many people couldn't help but hurriedly shout out in the surroundings of the cage battle arena. Many spectators with comparatively low cultivations hurriedly covered their ears, whereas, within this instant, the sound of the zither resounded out. Clang, clang, 2 ear-piercing and unpleasant sounds instantly resounded out from the zither. Whoosh, whoosh, At the same time, two vortex point fauces that ceaselessly revolved whistled out from the zither like two extremely swift arrows shot out from a bow. One of the vortexes intercepted the spirit saber in Yi Xiao's hand that flashed over. Clang! The sound of a zither resounded out as the spirit saber was swept to the side by the vortex, and the origin energy on the spirit saber dimmed down slightly, whereas, the other vortex directly flashed in full fury and like a shadow towards Yi Xiao. When faced with this vortex that approached with full fury, Yi Xiao's eyes squinted, and with a raise of his hand, he slashed out with his palm formed into a flat blade, heavily descending onto the vortex. However, the vortex instead easily blasted half the origin energy on the palm blade into dispersal, and then it heavily injured Yi Xiao in one go and blasted Yi Xiao flying. At the same time that Yi Xiao flew out in a sorry state, he repeatedly spat out a few mouthfuls of blood, and his countenance was ghastly pale to the extreme, whereas, the great four-spirit saber that flew out lost its supply of origin energy, causing it to completely dim down before falling to the ground and was barely grasped by Yi Xiao who'd just caught his breath. Zishang. Yi Xiao looked at the white-clothed young man in the distance that had put away his zither and stood there since long ago, and his eyes revealed deep fear. When did such a figure appear in the Darken Dynasty's imperial family? In the past, he actually didn't have the slightest knowledge. He defeated his opponent in a single move once again. Zishang's strength is too overbearing. The phenomenon of heaven and earth are still unable to completely condense into form, and were unable to discern exactly how many ancient horned dragon silhouettes Zishang can condense from the energy of the heavens and the earth when he attacks. I suspect that when Zishang attacks with his full strength, it's very likely he possesses the strength of more than 30 ancient horned dragons. It's possible, when they saw Zishang defeat Yi Xiao in a single more, the cage battle arena was in an uproar, as expected. Zishang's strength had shocked them once more. Along with Zishang and Yi Xiao withdrawing to the side, the ranking battles continued. Next, as soon as the old man finished speaking, a figure swiftly flashed out to arrive in the central area of the sky above the cage battle arena in the blink of an eye. Duan Lingtian. Instantly, the violet-clothed young man that took the initiative to enter the arena drew the attention of everyone. Who should I choose? It was the first time that Duan Lingtian had taken the initiative to enter the arena and challenge an opponent, and his gaze descended and flashed past each of the four young geniuses besides Yi Xiao as he carefully sized them up. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian noticed that besides Zishang, Bai Hao, and Zhang Shouyang having a calm expression, the expression of the second prince, Bai He, was slightly unsightly, and his gaze was complicated. Duan Lingtian revealed a brilliant smile when he saw this scene, and then his gaze locked onto Bai He. Second prince, if I didn't remember wrongly, you seem to have said that you want to teach me a lesson. Now I'll give you that chance, how about it? As soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, the cage battle arena was deathly silent. Numerous strange gazes descended onto Bai He as expected, and all of them felt that Duan Lingtian was truly too bad. With his strength that was capable of defeating Yi Xiao with a single move, he challenged Bai Hao that was obviously inferior to Yi Xiao and even spoke such mocking words. Wasn't he humiliating Bai He? Bai He's expression went gloomy when he heard Duan Lingtian, and when he recalled his actions of provoking Duan Lingtian at the beginning, he wished for nothing more than to slap himself at this moment. When he noticed the numerous strange gazes that shot over from the surroundings, he couldn't bear it any longer, and he flew out to stand in confrontation with Duan Lingtian before laughing coldly. Duan Lingtian, do you really think that I, Bai He, am afraid of you? I didn't think like this. Duan Lingtian shook his head, and then laughed indifferently. Then, second prince, please make a move. Duan Lingtian's casualness caused Bai He's expression to go ominous. Since you want to court death, then I'll fulfill your wish. At this moment, Bai He was like a wild beast that had its tail stepped on. He was fuming with rage as he flashed out, and a spirit sword appeared out of thin air within his hand. Right at the instant origin energy raged on the spirit sword in Bai He's hand, and his sword concept emerged. Duan Lingtian moved. Whirlwind. Duan Lingtian's speed was so swift that Bai He only swap a swift afterimage flashed by, and it directly flashed past him to arrive behind him. When he reacted to this, he instantly turned around and intended to attack once more. Duan Lingtian is victorious. The old man's voice clearly entered into Bai He's ears. Bai He's expression went grim when he heard this, and then he recalled the scene when Duan Lingtian defeated Yi Xiao earlier, causing him to hurriedly stretch out his hand and wipe his throat. The outcome was that his hand was covered in blood. Instantly, Bai He's expression became ghastly pale to the extreme, and he was slightly scared out of his wits. He knew that he'd lost completely. He wasn't even capable of reacting to the moment that Duan Lingtian drew his sword. 706 Chapter 707, The Last Three Battles. Slitting the throat with a single move once more. If it wasn't for Duan Lingtian holding back, the second prince would have died for sure. What a swift strike, what swift speed, even though the people present weren't surprised that Duan Lingtian was capable of defeating Bai He, they were still shocked by Duan Lingtian's speed. Duan Lingtian had attacked twice, respectively against Yi Xiao and Bai He. But both of them ended up with a similar fate, their throats were sliced before they could even react. Duan Lingtian. In the second-class spectating area where the members of the Darkened Dynasty were seated, King Yong revealed a smile. Duan Lingtian's display had exceeded his expectations, and it caused him to be extremely pleasantly surprised at the same time. Before this, he'd never imagined that a member of their Darkstone dynasty would actually be able to proceed to this extent, and if not for himself being sure that everything before him was real, he would feel that he might be dreaming. But no matter how shocked the other people in the cage battle arena were, the dynasty martial competition still continued, and it went on like a raging fire. Perhaps intentionally, or unintentionally, Duan Lingtian, Zi Shang, and Bai Hao had all chosen to first challenge the other three young geniuses as their opponents. In next to no time, the other three had lost at the hands of the three of them. In today's dynasty martial competition's ranking battles, the results for the 4th, 5th, and 6th have been decided, it's respectively Zhang Shouyang, Yi Xiao, and Bai He. In the sky above the cage battle arena, the old man announced with a sonorous voice. 6th place will obtain 2,000 low-grade origin stones as a reward. 5th will obtain 5,000 low-grade origin stones. 4th will obtain 10,000 low-grade origin stones. The other old man continued. As expected, as soon as the old man finished speaking, the scene was in an uproar. 10,000 low-grade origin stones. For a time, numerous burning gazes descended onto Zhang Shouyang in unison. Just 4th place is already able to obtain a reward of 10,000 low-grade origin stones. Then wouldn't the people ranked in the top 3 obtain even more origin stones? The hands of the person that obtains first in the dynasty martial competition will probably go weak from counting the origin stones he receives. The attention of the surrounding crowd had moved to the rewards of today's dynasty martial competition. Even more people were curious about the reward for the people in the top 3. No one was surprised by how wealthy the Darkened Dynasty's imperial family was. They knew that the origin stone vein in the Darkened Dynasty was controlled in the hands of the imperial family. Perhaps some top powers were able to take a share of it, but more than 50% of the origin stones mined from the vein would still be controlled in the hands of the imperial family. Just 4th place gets 10,000 low-grade origin stones. Duan Lingtian's gaze lit up. Doesn't that mean that it's very likely first will obtain a few tens of thousands of low-grade origin stones? When he thought up to here, Duan Lingtian's heart was filled with yearning to obtain first place in today's dynasty martial competition. Meanwhile, Zhang Shouyang, Zi Shang, and Bai He had each received their respective spatial ring that contained the origin stone reward before returning to the first-class spectating areas where they sat. They looked along with the others towards the last 3 young geniuses that remained in the distant sky. A violet-clothed young man and 2 white-clothed young men. Whoosh! A gust of wind lightly blew by, and it caused the clothes of the 3 of them to flutter. The battle was imminent. Now, the 3 of you will decide the top 3 rankings in the martial competition today. The old man looked at Duan Lingtian and the others as he spoke slowly. The 3 of them were competing for the top 3 ranks, in other words, any one of them would be facing 2 battles, whereas, there were a total of 3 battles, the final 3 battles. Only 3 battles were required for the final rankings to be decided upon. Along with the old man speaking, the clamorous noise in the cage battle arena slowly died down and gradually vanished. The entire cage battle arena returned to calm. Whoosh! A figure was the first to fly out and stand at the central area of the sky above the cage battle arena. It was a white-clothed young man. Zi Shang. Duan Lingtian's brows raised. At this moment, Zi Shang only had 2 choices. One was to choose Duan Lingtian as his opponent and challenge Bai Hao in the next round, the second choice was to choose Bai Hao as his opponent and battle Duan Lingtian after that. In next to no time, Zi Shang made a choice. Bai Hao. Zi Shang's gaze descended onto Bai Hao, and his burning gaze was filled with battle intent. Whoosh! Bai Hao flew out when he was challenged, and he stood opposite of Zishang as he stood in confrontation with Zishang. Two white-clothed figures stood facing each other, and it was a dazzling scene. I wonder who will win in the battle between Zishang and Bai Hao. As it is now, their chances of winning should be 50-50, after all, since the beginning until the end, we've been unable to discern their exact strength. I think that Bai Hao's chances of winning are higher. It wasn't only the surroundings crowd of spectators that didn't know who would win between Zishang and Bai Hao, even Duan Lingtian was unable to guess who was stronger between the two of them. Zishang and Bai Hao had comparable cultivations. This was the information they possessed up until now, whereas in terms of concept, they couldn't be sure even until now. As for spirit weapons, if Zishang didn't conceal a spirit weapon, then Bai Hao would surely surpass him in terms of spirit weapon. After all, Bai Hao possessed a grade 3 spirit weapon. Even though it wasn't the weapon he was skilled in using, it could be used as the weapon he was skilled in using, so it didn't affect the exertion of his strength. Under the gazes of everyone present, Zishang and Bai Hao moved at practically the exact same time. Zishang soared into the sky as a zither appeared out of thin air in his hand. At the same time, his palm descended as wind concept and fire concept combined into his origin energy to form a swiftly revolving vortex at the center of his palm, and it directly pressed onto the face of the zither. Whoosh! Practically the instant Zishang's hand descended, a spirit spear appeared in Bai's hand, and as he flashed like a bolt of lightning towards Zishang, the material flames that skyrocketed on his body caused him to seem to have transformed into a ball of flaming clouds that flashed in the sky. The temperature in the sky rose abruptly. Along with a wave of violent winds blowing over from all directions, Duan Lingtian felt a gust of hot wind assault him, and it enveloped him within. What an overbearing fire concept! Clang! The instant Zishang's hand descended, an ear-piercing sound of a zither sounded out. At the same time, a strong wave of air came from the center of Zishang's palm, passed through the zither, and swept towards the surroundings like undulating ripples. Within these ripples, slightly material origin energy could be faintly seen, and besides that was an azure-colored energy and a red-colored energy that grew ceaselessly. At this moment, Zishang had once again utilized the skill he used to defeat Bai He. Whoosh! When faced with this skill of Zishang's, Bai Hao neither dodged nor moved aside, and his hands shook suddenly before raising up the spirit spear and smashing down towards the wave of air that spread out. Bang! An enormous bang resounded out as the spirit spear in Bai Hao's hand was smashed out fiercely by him like a spirit rod. Instantly, two formidable energies collided with each other, and the material flames on the spirit spear in Bai Hao's hands gushed out as if it had transformed into a ferocious demon beast that opened up its bloody mouth and pounced over. On the other side, Zishang refused to show weakness as well, and his palm descended, it pushed out wave after wave to greet Bai Hao's attack. Bang! Another enormous bang sounded, and the spirit spear in Bai Hao's hand shook as he retreated a few meters back in a slightly sorry state, whereas, Zishang wasn't any better, and he'd retreated a few meters as well. The formidable collision of their probing attacks caused slight rosiness to suffuse both their faces, yet the eyes they looked at each other with was instead filled with battle intent that soared ceaselessly. In the sky above them, numerous ancient horned dragon silhouettes had slowly condensed into form in the end. In the sky above Bai Hao, a total of 31 lifelike ancient horned dragon silhouettes had appeared. 9th level of the Void Initiation Stage. Grade 3 Spirit Weapon. 9th level Fire Concept. 2nd level Rod Concept. At this moment, Bai Hao had revealed his true strength for the first time. On the other side, there were originally 32 ancient horned dragon silhouettes in the sky above Zishang, but in the blink of an eye, 2 of them had completely vanished, and it was as if they'd never appeared. It's the energy received from relying on the method of using fire concept to draw assistance from wind concept. Presently, as the wind concept and fire concept Zishang exerted had successively vanished, the strength bestowed onto him from the method of using fire concept to draw assistance from wind concept would naturally vanish as well. It was extremely easy for Duan Lingtian to guess what had happened before him. But he still couldn't help but be surprised. When relying on his wind concept to fuel his fire concept, Zishang is actually able to obtain the strength of an extra 2 ancient horned dragons. Flowing lights flickered within Duan Lingtian's eyes as he looked at Zishang, and his feelings were slightly complicated. In next to no time, his attention had moved to the 30 ancient horned dragon silhouettes that appeared in the sky above Zishang. This was the strength Zishang possessed before relying on his wind concept to fuel his fire concept. 9th level Void Initiation Stage. Grade 4 Spirit Weapon. Besides that, according to Duan Lingtian's conjecture, his wind concept and fire concept ought to be respectively a 7th level wind concept and 4th level fire concept. When the strength of the two types of concepts were combined together, it was comparable to the strength of 11 ancient horned dragons. Solely in terms of strength, it was comparable to the strength of Bai Hao's two concepts. But because the spirit weapon in his possession was a grade lower than the spirit weapon in Bai Hao's possession, under the condition that their cultivation and concept were equal, his strength was instead slightly weaker. Of course, all of this was under the precondition that he didn't utilize his wind concept to fuel his fire concept. Once he utilized his wind concept to fuel his fire concept, it was sufficient to allow his fire concept to advance by 2 levels and obtain an extra 2 ancient horned dragons worth of strength. So if both of them were to fight with their full strengths, it would still be Zishang who was superior in terms of strength that they could exert. Fueling fire concept with wind concept. Bai Hai's pupils couldn't help but constrict when he saw the 2 ancient horned dragon silhouettes that vanished in the blink of an eye, and he spoke out with slight astonishment. Your eyesight isn't bad. Zishang spoke indifferently. Fueling fire concept with wind concept. Bai Hao's words instead caused many people present to be filled with bewilderment. Although they'd never heard of this thing, but the 2 ancient horned dragon silhouettes of Zishang's that vanished in the blink of an eye had similarly caused them to be bewildered. Imperial Uncle, this disciple of yours is actually already capable of relying on the ability of using his fire concept to draw assistance from his wind concept and advance the might of his fire concept. It's truly shocking. The Darkin Dynasty's emperor looked at the black-clothed old man by his side and couldn't help but sigh with emotion. The shock on the old man's face gradually vanished, and replacing it was a gratified smile. 707 Chapter 708, The Unusual Change in Zishang. Of course, there were still many people that knew what fueling fire concept with wind concept meant. Along with the discussions of the people that knew the facts, it wasn't long before the entire cage battle arena understood what fueling fire concept with wind concept meant. So this fueling fire concept with wind concept is actually a skill, and one can rely on the might of wind force to improve the might of fire concept. Zishang has actually comprehended a skill like this. It's truly shocking. According to the experts present, martial artists below the void interpretation stage are rarely able to comprehend this sort of skill. Zishang is the first void initiation stage martial artist they know of that was capable of comprehending this type of skill. He's worthy of being a young genius that's recommended by the imperial family. Experts are really as numerous as the clouds in the imperial family, not to mention that both the young geniuses that have made an appearance today are stronger than the second prince. Similar discussions entered completely into Bai He's ears, causing his body to start trembling, and his fists had unconsciously been tightly clenched together. Zishang. Bai He gnashed his teeth as cold lights flickered within his eyes. Bai Hao was stronger than him, and he could only admit it. But Zishang, who was someone of lowly birth in his eyes, had actually trampled on him, so how could he endure this? In the sky above the cage battle arena, Zishang and Bai Hao attacked once more, and the situation of the battle was extremely intense. In terms of strength, if Zishang didn't use his technique of fueling fire concept with wind concept, he was inferior to Bai Hao, but once he utilized that technique, he completely surpassed Bai Hao. Of course, his technique of fueling fire concept with wind concept required a certain amount of time to accumulate strength, and it was precisely because of this that Bai Hao was able to grab the opportunity to try his best to suppress Zishang and not allow Zishang to willfully increase the might of his fire concept. With Zishang's current strength, he was at most capable of increase his fire concept by 2 levels. But now, every time he increased it by a single level, he wouldn't be in time to continue making it increase as he would become entangled with Bai Hao, causing him to utterly not be able to increase his fire concept by 2 levels. After increasing his fire concept by a single level, his strength was only equal to Bai Hao, and coupled with them being on par in terms of combat experiences and martial skill, the battle had temporarily come to a tie. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian left the sky above the cage battle arena and returned to the second-class spectating area where the members of the Darkstone Empire were seated, and he sat back by Su Li's side. Duan Lingtian, who do you think will win? Su Li couldn't refrain from asking when he saw Duan Lingtian return. I don't know. Duan Lingtian shook his head and said truthfully, based on the current circumstances, so long as Bai Hao doesn't give Zishang the chance to increase his fire concept by 2 levels, it would be very unlikely that Zishang would be capable of defeating him. Whereas if he gave Zisheng the chance, or perhaps if Zisheng grabbed onto an opportunity to increase his fire concept by 2 levels in one go, then it wouldn't be impossible for Zisheng to defeat Bai Hao. Duan Lingtian finished speaking in a single breath. Su Li nodded with understanding as he felt this way as well. Clang, 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 comma. Zisheng held the zither with one hand as origin energy that was followed by fire concept and wind concept raged on his other hand, and it ceaselessly descended onto the zither strings to resound with a wave of ear-piercing zither sounds. At the same time, numerous attacks that were like flame wheels ceaselessly swept toward Bai Hao. Bang, 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 comma. When faced with Zisheng's repeated attacks, Bai Hao wasn't willing to show weakness, and the spirit spear in his hand was raised and smashed down repeatedly like a spirit rod, and it successively smashed Zisheng's attacks into dispersal. He didn't dare dally in the slightest bit as he knew that once he gave Zisheng an opportunity to take advantage of, he would lose for sure. In the sky above the cage battle arena, the situation of the battle was intense, and it caused the spectating crowd to be bedazzled. I truly never imagined that the former member of the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, Zither Young Master, would actually possess such a formidable strength now. I wonder exactly what fortuitous encounter he obtained. Su Li had a complicated gaze as he lightly sighed. Su Li's words aroused the resonance of Duan Lingtian and Long Yun. Both of them were from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom like Zisheng, and both of them had some relationship with Zisheng. So they felt it even more deeply. Duan Lingtian, who was originally silently watching the battle, suddenly noticed that his spatial ring was lightly trembling, and even though the trembling's frequency wasn't high, he was still able to sense it clearly. What's going on? Duan Lingtian thought in his heart as his mind entered within the spatial ring. Instantly, the events within the space of his spatial ring caused him to be unable to refrain from being stunned. He noticed that the Devilseal tablet that was originally silently placed idly at the side had suddenly seemed as if it had gone mad, and it ceaselessly knocked against the space within his spatial ring. The things in the space within his spatial ring were in a complete mess from being knocked around by it, and everything was scattered around as if his spatial ring had become a rubbish dump. This is, at the same time that Duan Lingtian's expression froze, he couldn't help but recall that yesterday morning, the space within his spatial ring had suffered an unexplainable attack, causing the things within his spatial ring to be in disorder and scattered all over. At that time, he didn't know what had happened, whereas, he understood completely now, and it turned out that it was the Devilseal tablet that did it. What exactly is going on? Duan Lingtian was completely ill at ease when encountering something like this, as there was utterly no similar records within the memories of the rebirth Martial Emperor. Logically speaking, the space within a spatial ring was only capable of storing things that didn't possess life. This was an iron law within the Cloud Continent, whereas the Devilseal tablet was something without a life, as the soul within it had already been exterminated all those years ago. So logically speaking, it would be impossible for it to contain life. But now, the unusual movements of the Devilseal tablet caused Duan Lingtian to be slightly perplexed. Based on the actions of the Devilseal tablet, it seems to want to charge out of my spatial ring. But even though the movements of the Devilseal tablet were forceful, it was incapable of shaking the space within the spatial ring. The solidity of the space within the spatial ring was unimaginable. At this moment, Duan Lingtian even had the desire to let the Devilseal tablet out. But practically at the exact same time, his intuition told him that if he let the Devilseal tablet out, it would absolutely not be a good thing. So he endured his desire. Wait, there's surely a reason why the Devilseal tablet would be like this. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath as he came back to his senses, and his gaze descended onto the 2 people that were fighting intensely in the sky. With just a glance, he noticed that something was off. Between Zisheng's brows, Duan Lingtian noticed that a small black dot had appeared between Zisheng's brows at this moment. The small black dot was ceaselessly enlarging, and it seemed as if it was taking root and growing. What's that? Duan Lingtian was dumbstruck as he gazed at the space between Zisheng's brows. Meanwhile, he noticed the commotion made by the Devilseal tablet in his spatial ring had become greater. Could it be that the unusual actions of the Devilseal tablet are related to the small black dot that's ceaselessly enlarging between Zisheng's brows? When he thought up to here, Duan Lingtian felt that it was slightly unbelievable. Even during his 2 lifetimes, the rebirth Martial Emperor had never encountered such a strange thing, yet he'd actually encountered such a strange thing now. Could it be that the small black dot that has appeared between Zisheng's brows is related to the Devilseal tablet? Now, Duan Lingtian could only think like this, but even after thinking for a long time, he still couldn't wrap his head around it. Look, quickly, there seems to be something between Zishang's brows. That's a black-colored flame brand. No, I remember that there wasn't such a brand between Zishang's brows earlier. I still remember that there was no such brand between Zishang's brows earlier. What exactly is going on? A wave of confusion arose in the cage battle arena as they were shocked by the peculiar scene before them. A brand appearing out of nowhere on a person's face, and it was even an obvious brand, caused others to feel a chill run down their spines and their scalps go numb. At this moment, even the Feng clan's eldest master, Feng Wudao, the emperor, and the black-clothed old man by the emperor's side, unconsciously became tensed and extremely serious. Because the scene before their eyes caused them to feel astonishment. That small black dot has become a black-colored flame brand in the blink of an eye. After the small black dot appeared between Zishang's brows, Duan Lingtian's gaze had never left it, and he clearly saw the changes between Zishang's brows. The Devilseal tablet seems to have gone into a greater frenzy. Duan Lingtian noticed that after the small black dot between Zishang's brows became a flame brand, the Devilseal tablet within his spatial ring seemed as if it had gone mad and madly collided all around the space within his spatial ring. If it wasn't for the space within his spatial ring being sufficiently solid, it would have probably knocked a hole open long ago. What exactly is the flame brand between Zishang's brows? Why is it able? Duan Lingtian thought in his heart, but his thoughts hadn't finished revolving when his pupils couldn't help but constrict, and his face was covered in astonishment as if he'd seen something terrifying. At the exact same time, Zishang, who was in the sky above the cage battle arena and had a flame brand appear between his brows, had put down the zither in his left hand before his right hand suddenly formed into a fist. No one noticed that at this moment, Zishang's eyes had dimmed down slightly. Subsequently, he stepped out slightly stiffly, and it was this step that caused him to vanish before the eyes of everyone. In the next moment, he'd already arrived behind Bai Hao, causing Bai Hao to be unable to react in the slightest towards all this. Bang! At the same time, Zishang's fist smashed out, and he didn't even rely on the amplification of his spirit weapon to smash his fist towards Bai Hao. Everywhere his bare fist passed, the sounds of air exploding rose and fell, and the airflow in the sky seemed to have been completely extracted. The might of his punch shook the heavens. Stay your hand! The emperor's face went grim as he shouted out in alarm. The two old men in the sky above the cage battle arena had reacted as well, and they moved out with the intention of stopping Zishang. Even though they didn't know what had happened to Zishang, but the strength that was contained on Zishang's fist caused them to fear from the bottom of their hearts. At this instant, Zishang wasn't a void initiation stage martial artist in their eyes, but an existence that wasn't inferior to them. Swoosh, swoosh, the two old men flashed out and pounced towards Zishang. But unfortunately, their speeds were fast, yet Zishang was faster, and his fist blasted with terrifying strength that raged and skyrocketed as it smashed towards Bai Hao without holding back in the slightest. Bai Hao's expression instantly went pale when he heard the sound of something tearing through the sky behind him. Never had he imagined that Zishang's strength would increase so greatly in an instant, and Zishang had actually arrived behind him right under his very eyes. 708 Chapter 709, Secret Technique. Bang! Zishang vanished on the spot and appeared behind Bai Hao before swinging out his fist. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Even though the two old men that presided over the dynasty martial competition had pounced towards Zishang in a timely manner, their speeds were obviously unable to stop Zishang in time. Stay your hand! Right when the emperor and the black-clothed old man by his side went grim and intended to make a move. Swish! A sword howl briefly appeared, and it instantly sounded throughout the entire cage battle arena. For a time, the two old men stopped their actions, and they seemed to have thought of something, causing them to heave a sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted off their shoulders. In the next moment, everyone saw that Zishang, who swung his fist to smash towards Bai Hao, was blasted flying along with the appearance of a brief sword howl, and he repeatedly spat out a few mouthfuls of blood before barely being able to stop himself. In the sky above Zishang, the numerous ancient horned dragon silhouettes that hadn't completely condensed into form along with the swing of his fist were completely destroyed before they could be completed. Thank you, Lord Wudao, for this life-saving grace. Bai Hao, who survived the calamity, couldn't help but take a deep breath before looking at Feng Wudao on the Feng clan's spectating area and bowing in thanks. Even though the sword howl only appeared briefly, and the origin energy sword light was difficult to be noticed by others, but he was still able to guess that the person who executed it was undoubtedly Feng Wudao. Because, amongst the experts present, only Feng Wudao had the strength to save him at that critical moment earlier. Moreover, Feng Wudao himself was an extremely formidable sword cultivator. Thank you, big brother Wudao, for lending a hand. Meanwhile, the emperor thanked Feng Wudao. Feng Wudao nodded lightly with a carefree expression as if he'd done something of no importance. But his gaze descended onto the distant Zishang at this moment, and his brows frowned slightly. At the instant earlier, he even had the feeling that the strength contained within Zishang's fist at that moment was absolutely something only a martial artist at the 4th level of the void interpretation stage or above could possess. When Zishang swung out with his fist, he didn't utilize a spirit weapon of concept, and he'd only purely utilized origin energy to make Bai Hao be unable to resist in the slightest. All of this is related to the flame brand between Zishang's brows. Feng Wudao guessed in his heart. There was only this explanation at this moment. Even though he didn't know what the flame brand that appeared out of nowhere between Zishang's brows meant, he could guess that it was an extremely terrifying thing, and it was capable of allowing a 9th level void initiation stage martial artist to possess a strength at the 4th level of the void interpretation stage or above in the blink of an eye. So would it be a simple thing? Zishang is victorious. In the sky above the cage battle arena, the two old men heaved a sigh of relief in unison when they saw Feng Wudao interfering, and one of them announced with a tone as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. Along with the announcement of the old man, everyone in the surroundings of the cage battle arena recovered from their shock. It was as if they'd discussed and agreed upon it earlier as the gazes of every single person in the cage battle arena descended in unison onto Zishang. Even until now, they couldn't help but feel a chill run down their spines when they recalled the scene from before. After the flames brand appeared between the brows of Zishang, he seemed as if he was possessed by something, and not only did he seem to have become like a completely different person, he'd instantly possessed a strength that completely surpassed Bai Hao. Moreover, he didn't hold back in the slightest when he attacked Bai Hao earlier. Could it be that after this flame brand appeared between Zishang's brows, not only will it cause his strength to increase greatly, he will also lose all reason? It's too terrifying. It was simply as if he was possessed by a devil. If it wasn't for Lord Wudao making a move in time, Bai Hao would have probably already died at Zishang's hand. Amongst the waves of clamorous discussions in the surroundings of the cage battle arena, all of them were filled with deep terror. Even until now, they couldn't help but feel their scalps go slightly numb when they thought of the changes that occurred on Zishang earlier. That flame brand vanished. Duan Lingtian, whose face was covered in shock and had his fixed upon Zishang since the beginning, had suddenly noticed that the flame brand between Zishang's brows had gradually become faint and vanished. The Devilseal tablet has stopped moving restlessly. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian noticed that the Devilseal tablet within his spatial ring wasn't in a frenzy any longer, and it lay there silently without the slightest movement. Looks like my guess was correct. The changes that occurred on Zishang earlier are deeply connected with the Devilseal tablet. At this moment, Duan Lingtian had completely confirmed it. Whoosh! After the flame brand between his brows vanished, Zishang's stiff face eased up slightly, and a wisp of a complacent smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. But in next to no time, his face went pale once more, and he repeatedly spat out 2 mouthfuls of blood. After he hurriedly withdrew a healing medicinal pill and consumed it, Zishang's expression eased up, and then he retreated to the side as he looked at Bai Hao. Prince Hao, I'm injured, yet you aren't, so you'll fight Duan Lingtian first. As he finished speaking, Zishang's face was filled with confidence, as if victory was within his grasp, and he seemed as if he was sure that he would surely be the top-ranked young genius in the dynasty martial competition today. Bai Hao nodded, but the gaze he looked at Zishang with was filled with fear. Duan Lingtian, I'll fight you after 15 minutes. After Bai Hao's gaze left Zishang, it locked onto Duan Lingtian as he directly issued his challenge. Okay, Duan Lingtian nodded. However, at this moment, his thoughts were still on the changes that occurred on Zishang, and he was unable to wrap his head around exactly what had happened to Zishang earlier. It wasn't only Duan Lingtian, the other people had similar thoughts as well. The changes in Zishang earlier were too strange. Zishang, meanwhile, a void interpretation stage expert on a first-class spectating area stared at Zishang with a burning gaze as he asked directly. Can you use what ability you utilized earlier? I felt that at that instant earlier, your strength seemed to have undergone a tremendous change. It was as if you possessed a formidable strength that was comparable to the void interpretation stage. But, you seemed to have lost all reason at that moment. Along with this void interpretation stage expert finishing, the gazes of all the spectators in the surroundings of the cage battle arena including Duan Lingtian himself had descended onto Zishang in unison, as they wanted to know how Zishang would answer. In the first-class spectating area of the Darken Dynasty, everyone from the emperor to the members of the imperial family had looked at Zishang with eyes filled with bewilderment. Big brother, exactly what happened? Ziyan's beautiful face was covered in worry as the scene of Zishang losing all reason earlier caused her to feel ill at ease. It was precisely because of this that she was unable to feel happy even if Zishang had defeated Bai Hao. Actually, it's nothing great. Right when most people thought that Zishang wouldn't reveal his secret, Zishang had spoken out instead. What I executed earlier ought to be considered to be a secret technique. This secret technique was something I possessed innately, and every time I execute, it can allow the energy contained within my origin energy to increase by a few times. Of course, a secret technique like this possesses an extremely great side effect, and that is that it will make me lose all reason. This is something everyone ought to have seen earlier. Prince Hao, sorry for the offense earlier. At that moment, I couldn't control myself, I hope you can forgive me. As he finished speaking, Zishang looked at Bai Hao before he slightly bowed in apology. There's no harm done. Even I never imagined that you actually know such a terrifying secret technique, but unfortunately, you possessed it innately and others are unable to comprehend it. Bai Hao shook his head lightly as he revealed his magnanimity, and as he finished speaking, he had a regretful expression. But Bai Hao's gaze contained deep meaning, and he obviously was saying one thing while he thought something else, and didn't believe Zishang. Zishang naturally noticed the deep meaning within Bai Hao's gaze, yet he disregarded it. So that's how it is. I truly never imagined that Zishang was innately capable of such a heaven-defying secret technique. If I was capable of utilizing a secret technique like this, then wouldn't my strength increase by a few times as well? My god, Zishang knows such a secret technique, then doesn't that mean that so long as he utilizes this secret technique, it's very likely that he'll obtain the honor of number 1 in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties? The first in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. If it's really obtained by Zishang, then our Darken dynasty will be utterly famous. The surrounding crowd of spectators discussed animatedly, and many people were even excited to the point their faces flushed red. As far as most people were concerned, since Zishang knew such a terrifying secret technique, first place in the dynasty martial competition today would surely be his. Even if it was the first in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties, it might not be impossible for him to obtain. After they witnessed the secret technique Zishang executed, they were filled with confidence towards Zishang. Imperial uncle, I really don't know how to describe this disciple of yours, but with him in our Darken dynasty, he's truly the fortune of our Darken dynasty. The emperor said to the old man by his side. Even I never imagined that there were actually so many great secrets concealed in the possession of this little fellow. The old man shook his head and smiled, and not the slightest bit blame or displeasure could be discerned from his beaming face. As far as he was concerned, since he was able to take such a personal disciple in his entire lifetime, then even if he died now, he wouldn't have any regrets. Secret technique. Unlike most of the people in the cage battle arena that deeply believed Zishang's words, Duan Lingtian utterly didn't believe it. Even though he didn't quite understand secret techniques himself, but there were many records related to secret techniques in the memories of the 2 lifetimes of the rebirth martial emperor. A secret technique was mostly an ability possessed by a special race, and it was utterly impossible for ordinary humans to master. Besides that, all those secret technique possessed shocking side effects. As far as he was concerned, if the changes that occurred on Zishang earlier was because of a secret technique, it was impossible for the side effect to be so simple. After all, it was a secret technique that allowed the strength of the origin energy within Zishang's body to increase by more than a single level. The side effect of this secret technique was merely to lose one's reason. No matter if others believed it or not, he didn't. Moreover, the biggest reason that Duan Lingtian didn't believe it wasn't because of this, but it was mostly because of the Devilseal tablet in his spatial ring. Now, he'd already completely confirmed that the changes that occurred on Zishang was related to the Devilseal tablet. Even though he didn't know the exact reason. 709 Chapter 710, The Bewilderment of the Group of Inscription Masters. Perhaps Zishang's words were able to deceive the others, yet it wasn't capable of deceiving Duan Lingtian. I truly never imagined that this Zishang possessed an ability like that, After the flame brand appeared between his brows, his strength rose by at least a few times. The punch he swung at Bai Hao earlier contained origin energy that was at least at the 4th level of the void interpretation stage. As the person that had merged with the 2 lifetimes worth of memories of the rebirth martial emperor, Duan Lingtian was still capable of discerning this even without the phenomenon of the heavens and the earth. Even though Duan Lingtian was unwilling to admit it in his heart, he had to admit that he was absolutely not a match for Zishang at that moment. Looks like the fortuitous encounter Zishang obtained is extraordinary, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. He clearly noticed the expressions of the people on the imperial family's first-class spectating area when the flame brand appeared between Zishang's brows and Zishang exploded out with a strength that was comparable to a void interpretation stage expert. At that time, he knew that all the members of the imperial family, including Zishang, master, seemed to be utterly unaware that Zishang possessed a technique like this. He could be sure that this technique of Zishang's was something that only Zishang knew beforehand, and this technique ought to be from a fortuitous encounter Zishang obtained in the past. Duan Lingtian. Suddenly, a voice sounded out by his ears, causing Duan Lingtian to be pulled back from his thoughts. It was Bai Hao who was in the sky above the cage battle arena that had spoken once more. I'm done. Obviously, Bai Hao had already finished resting. Even though he was the party that lost in the battle earlier, yet he wasn't the party that was injured because Feng Wudao had made a move in a timely manner to save him from Zishang. Now, after he consumed a medicinal pill and recovered his origin energy to his prime, he beckoned at Duan Lingtian to battle him. Whoosh! After returning to his senses, Duan Lingtian didn't hesitate to fly out and stand in confrontation with Bai Hao. Duan Lingtian had a calm expression as he looked at Bai Hao. Bai Hao was a prince of the Darken dynasty's imperial family, his cultivation had surpassed the second prince Bai He, he'd comprehended 9th level fire concept and 2nd level rod concept, and he possessed a grade 3 spirit spear. Bai Hao was a formidable enemy to Duan Lingtian. Of course, he was only a formidable enemy to Duan Lingtian if he didn't execute his sole skill, Thousand Illusions. Meanwhile, the surrounding crowd of spectators had moved their attention from Zishang towards Duan Lingtian and Bai Hao, who were standing in confrontation. They knew that the incident earlier had come to an end. I wonder if this young man from the Darkstone Empire is capable of defeating Prince Hao. Up until now, his exact strength is still a mystery. I'm really looking forward to him fighting. Many people stared at Duan Lingtian with burning gazes. Everyone from the Darkstone Empire even held their breaths. All along the way until now, they'd felt proud of Duan Lingtian because he was representing their Darkstone Empire in the Darken dynasty. So, they hoped that Duan Lingtian would be able to continue going forward and defeat Bai Hao to obtain the 2nd rank in the dynasty martial competition today. As for the first, they utterly didn't dare think of it now. The strength Zishang revealed caused them to be shocked from the bottom of their hearts. That strength had already exceeded the scope of a void initiation stage martial artist, and it wasn't something Duan Lingtian could go against. At least, the current Duan Lingtian was unable. The odds are really low. On the spectating area that belonged to the Feng clan, Feng Tianwu returned to her seat as she mumbled. Young miss, what's the odds for Brother Duan in this battle? Elder Kong asked curiously. It's only 1. Feng Tianwu sighed. Then how much did you place on Brother Duan? Elder Kong asked. I of course placed the entire pile of origin stones from the winnings in Big Brother Duan's 5,000 low-grade origin stones, it's a total of 13,000 low-grade origin stones. Feng Tianwu spoke as a matter of course. The corners of Elder Kong's mouth twitched as he said with a bitter smile, if Brother Duan wins this battle, then you'll be able to win another 13,000 low-grade origin stones, it's quite a lot. The cage battle arena that was slightly clamorous had gradually quieted down. In the sky above the cage battle arena, the violet-clothed young man and the white-clothed young man stood facing each other, and the battle was imminent. Duan Lingtian, you and I will battle each other soon. Even if you take the initiative to admit defeat, I'll surely trample on your dignity, and make you unable to raise your head in the world forever. Zishang stared fixedly at the violet-clothed young man as a cold smile suffused the corners of his mouth, and his eyes flickered with a cold light. Duan Lingtian naturally noticed Zishang's gaze, yet he disregarded it and his attention was completely converged onto Bai Hao, who was before him. When he saw Bai Hao hadn't attacked for a long time, he decided to take the initiative. Zishang even dared to utilize such a terrifying ability, and he casually fabricated a secret technique to dismiss the curiosity of others, perhaps I can learn from him. Duan Lingtian came to a decision in his heart. Practically the instant he made this decision, Duan Lingtian moved. Whirlwind. At this instant, Duan Lingtian seemed to have transformed into an extremely swift gale that swept towards Bai Hao. When he saw a 7-foot-long spear appear out of thin air in Bai Hao's hand and origin energy skyrocket on Bai Hao's body to finally transform into material flames that were ready to gush out, Duan Lingtian's expression remained unchanged. Whoosh! As his figure flashed out, a dim light flashed into appearance within the depths of Duan Lingtian's eyes that squinted. Duan Lingtian's spiritual force didn't hesitate in the slightest to practically instantly fuse into the soul brand in the depths of his soul. Thousand illusions. In the next moment, Duan Lingtian directly utilized his soul skill. A mysterious illusory space instantly condensed into form before enveloping Bai Hao and followed him like a shadow. All of this happened within the blink of an eye. When faced with the illusory space that was constructed by a spiritual force at the second level of the void interpretation stage, Bai Hao was trapped within it as expected. In the world before Bai Hao's eyes, Duan Lingtian's figure flashed out to arrive nearby before attacking him, whereas, he naturally wouldn't stand idly by and accept death. He fiercely swung the spirit spear in his hand to instantly smash out towards Duan Lingtian. In reality, outside the illusory space, Duan Lingtian had already moved to the side before he even came close to Bai Hao, and he arrived behind Bai Hao in a short moment. What's going on? Meanwhile, a peculiar scene appeared before the eyes of the crowd of spectators in the surroundings of the cage battle arena. They saw that when Duan Lingtian flashed to arrive behind Bai Hao, not only did Bai Hao not avoid, he didn't even turn around, and he instead raised the grade 3 spirit spear in his hand before fiercely smashing out towards the air before him. Has Bai Hao gone mad? Many people were dumbstruck. Bang! Right at this moment, with a raise of his hand, Duan Lingtian, who had moved to arrive behind Bai Hao, had slapped out with his palm to hit directly onto Bai Hao's back, directly heavily injuring and blasting Bai Hao flying. Pooh! Bai Hao's figure shook as he spat a mouthful of blood. His figure was like an arrow that left the bow before stopping in midair in a slightly embarrassing state, and his eyes were filled with rage as he shouted coldly. Who attacked me from behind? But he was quickly stunned. Because when he turned around, he noticed that the person who heavily injured him was actually Duan Lingtian. How can this be possible? Bai Hao had a dumbstruck expression and didn't dare believe that all this was real. Duan Lingtian was clearly fighting with him head-on earlier, whereas, it was precisely because he was fighting Duan Lingtian head-on that he didn't pay attention to his back, causing him to be struck with a sneak attack. But after he suffered a strike from the sneak attack and was blasted flying, he noticed that the Duan Lingtian he was fighting with had vanished, and another Duan Lingtian had appeared. Moreover, this Duan Lingtian that appeared was the person that launched a sneak attack on him. He could be 100% sure that it was absolutely impossible for the Duan Lingtian that was fighting him to instantly move around and arrive behind him before launching an attack from behind. At this moment, if it wasn't for only a single Duan Lingtian remaining at the scene, he would feel that Duan Lingtian had a twin brother. What happened just now? The surroundings of the cage battle arena were in an uproar. The scene that occurred earlier caused them to be filled with bewilderment. Originally, when they saw Duan Lingtian charge towards Bai Hao, they thought that both of them would fight head-on. But in the blink of an eye, Duan Lingtian instead moved to arrive behind Bai Hao, and they'd seen all of this clearly. Yet at this moment, a strange scene appeared. Bai Hao actually abandoned Duan Lingtian and attacked the air as if the air was his opponent. At that instant, they even felt that Bai Hao might have gone mad. Subsequently, they saw Bai Hao being heavily injured by Duan Lingtian's palm strike in a completely unguarded state before being blasted flying and directly losing. Of course, there was a reason they felt Bai Hao had lost. So long as it was someone with a discerning gaze, they would be able to discern that it was impossible for Bai Hao to continue battling Duan Lingtian with his current condition. They wouldn't have discussed and agreed to put on a show, right? Impossible. Bai Hao is the young prince of our Darkin dynasty's imperial family. How could he possibly act recklessly in an occasion like this? If they aren't putting on a show, then can you explain what happened earlier? The entire cage battle arena was in an uproar, and they were shocked by the strange scene that occurred earlier. Of course, there was no lack of inscription masters at the void interpretation stage present, and every time they watched the battle, they would unconsciously stretch out their spiritual force. Earlier, the instant that Bai Hao attacked the air, they obviously sensed a material spiritual force envelop Bai Hao. Right when they wanted to investigate that spiritual force, Bai Hao was already heavily injured and blasted flying by Duan Ling Tian, whereas, that spiritual force vanished along with this. Elder Lu, what technique is that? I don't know, it seems to be a technique executed by spiritual force. Not only that, that spiritual force wasn't weak, and it was Duan Ling Tian's spiritual force. That spiritual force is probably at the second level of the void interpretation stage. I truly never imagined that a mere 9th level void initiation stage martial artist like Duan Ling Tian actually possessed such a formidable spiritual force. Perhaps he obtained some sort of fortuitous encounter, but this is only second in importance. The most important is the technique he utilized earlier. Elder Kong, amongst us inscription masters, your spiritual force is the strongest. Did you notice any clues? On the 9 first-class spectating areas, many inscription masters that were familiar with each other had started to privately discuss animatedly via voice transmission. 710 Chapter 711, Ghost Flame. In next to no time, the gazes of many inscription masters had descended in unison onto an old man on the first-class spectating area that belonged to the Feng clan. Elder Kong couldn't help but be stunned when faced with the inquiries of these inscription masters via voice transmission. Brother Duan, did you rely on your spiritual force to execute some sort of skill earlier? Actually, Elder Kong had noticed the spiritual force Duan Ling Tian enveloped Bai Hao with, but he didn't know the specifics of what Duan Ling Tian had done. He subconsciously felt that Bai Hao's abnormality was related to Duan Ling Tian's spiritual force. As an inscription master at the void interpretation stage, he himself had no way of executing any skill via spiritual force that could directly affect another. So he felt that when something unusual happened, there was surely something strange going on, and the essence of the problem was Duan Ling Tian. More or less like Zishang, a secret technique I possess innately. Duan Ling Tian didn't hesitate in the slightest when Elder Kong's voice transmission entered his ears, and he spoke of the excuse he'd prepared long ago. Elder Kong was first stunned, and then he derided via voice transmission. Do you think I would believe that? Is it important whether you believe it or not? Duan Ling Tian questioned in reply. Right, is it important? Presently, it was obvious that Duan Ling Tian was unwilling to speak about it, and if Duan Ling Tian didn't speak about it, it would be utterly impossible for him to know the truth. But Elder Kong didn't continue trying to get to the bottom of it, and he instead replied those inscription masters one by one. I know a little bit about this skill of Duan Ling Tian's, it's a secret technique he possesses innately. Elder Kong's words caused the group of inscription masters to be stunned. A secret technique again, moreover, it's possessed innately as well. For a time, all the inscription masters looked at each other and seemed to want to ask the other, do you believe it? But even if they didn't believe it, they could do nothing, because they were utterly unable to explain exactly what skill had Duan Ling Tian utilized earlier. Demonic technique. In the first-class spectating area belonging to the imperial family, unlike the dumbstruck expression of the emperor, the black-clothed old man, and Bai He, Ziyan's beautiful face went pale and her eyes were filled with terror. She'd experienced Duan Ling Tian's demonic technique herself and deeply knew of its terrors. Brother, Ziyan instantly looked at Zishang who stood in the distant sky, and said via voice transmission with slight worry, Duan Ling Tian's demonic technique is too terrifying. Prince Hao is actually completely helpless before him. Yan, there's no need to worry, wasn't Bai Hao similarly helpless before me a moment ago? Zishang lightly shook his head and consoled Ziyan via voice transmission with a tone filled with confidence. Ziyan recalled her older brother's ability when she heard this, causing her to heave a sigh of relief, yet her beautiful eyes still revealed slight worry. Elder Ghost, you said that Duan Ling Tian executed a soul skill earlier. Zishang's cold and indifferent gaze stared at Duan Ling Tian as his thoughts went straight into the depths of his mind, and he seemed to be communication with something. Yes, the ghastly and aged voice sounded out abruptly within Zishang's mind. Even though I don't know why a human kid like him is capable of executing a soul skill, that's like a spiritual force attack before the martial emperor stage, but I can be sure that he used a type of illusory realm soul skill to affect that Bai Hao, and that's why he was capable of defeat Bai Hao in one go. Illusory realm soul skill, what's that? Zishang was slightly shocked in his heart. An illusory realm soul skill is a soul skill that constructs an illusory space with spiritual force, and with a single thought, one is capable of sealing another within the illusory space to be at one's mercy. The ghastly and aged voice sounded out once more. Zishang's pupils constricted as he gasped in his heart. In this way, when I carried out the agreement of 2 years with him in the 7-star sword sect that day, he utilized this illusory realm soul skill to cause me to be in such a sorry state, and he even caused the others to think that I'd gone mad. When he recalled the scene in the life and death arena at the peak of the 7-star sword sect's Dubi Peak, Zishang's expression darkened completely. At that time, he thought that Duan Lingtian had utilized some sort of demonic technique, yet never had he imagined that it would turn out to be a type of illusory realm soul skill. Elder Ghost. Zishang's tone contained slight fear. Since Duan Lingtian can execute such a terrifying soul skill, wouldn't that mean that I'll surely lose in the battle with him? I'm not resigned to losing. As he finished speaking, Zishang had an unwilling expression. HMPH. Do you really think that an illusory realm soul skill can be invincible under the heavens? The ghastly and aged voice grunted coldly, and then continued. An illusory realm soul skill is only effective against another whose spiritual force is inferior to one's own or another who possesses a similar spiritual force as oneself, and is an inscription master. So long as you allow me to temporarily control your body, my incomplete soul will fuse into your soul. At that time, even though your spiritual force would be unable to compare to my peak strength, yet it would far surpass this kid's second-level void interpretation stage spiritual force, and his soul skill would be utterly useless against you. As he finished speaking, the ghastly and aged voice was filled with disdain. Zishang was instantly overjoyed when he heard this. Since it's like this, then I'll trouble Elder Ghost. Remember your promise to me, otherwise, I, Ghost Flame, will put my incomplete soul on the line to make you suffer. You ought to know that I have the ability. Suddenly, the aged and ghastly voice's tone changed and threatened him. Yes, Zishang hurriedly replied without daring to dally in the slightest. Even though the thing that was concealed within the depths of his mind it was only a strand of an incomplete soul that was unable to seize control of his body, yet this soul's background and ability was something he knew clearly. He knew that this was an extremely terrifying figure and a double-sided blade in his hands. If used wisely, it would kill a myriad of enemies, yet if misused, it would destroy him. Duan Lingtian, perhaps never in your dreams would you have imagined that your soul skill would be utterly useless before me, right? So long as Elder Ghost's incomplete soul temporarily fuses with my soul and obtains temporary control of my body, my spiritual force will far surpass yours. Zishang stared fixedly at Duan Lingtian as a wisp of a cold smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. At this moment, his heart that had risen to his throat because of seeing Duan Lingtian execute the demonic technique one more had completely returned to its place, and he was completely unafraid. Duan Lingtian, what did you do to me just now? Bai Hao stared at Duan Lingtian with a burning gaze as he asked with a low voice. Along with Bai Hao's question, besides the group of void interpretation stage inscription masters including Elder Kong, everyone present including Feng Wudao had turned their gazes towards Duan Lingtian in unison. For a time, Duan Lingtian had undoubtedly become the center of attention. Duan Lingtian was prepared since long ago, and he said unhurriedly, my situation is similar to Zishang, I innately possess a type of secret technique. Duan Lingtian's words were like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples, and it caused the spectators in the surroundings of the cage battle arena to be in a complete uproar. A secret technique again, he wouldn't be deliberately deceiving everyone, right? When Zishang executed the secret technique, at least a flame brand would appear between his brows, and he would instantly possess a strength comparable to a void interpretation stage expert. Whereas I was utterly unable to discern any clue when he executed his secret technique. Could it be that his secret technique caused Bai Hao to instantly seem as if he'd gone mad? It ought to be to cause Bai Hao to hallucinate. If it's true, then this secret technique is too peculiar. Even though many people felt that these two types of secret techniques appeared one by one was truly too much of a coincidence, no one doubted Duan Lingtian's words. After all, they were utterly unable to explain what had occurred earlier. Secret technique. Duan Lingtian knows a secret technique as well. Moreover, it's such a peculiar secret technique. Looks like Duan Lingtian still had the chance to compete for the first in the dynasty martial competition with Zishang. The eyes of the group of young geniuses from the Darkstone Empire lit up. Originally, they didn't hold any hope for Duan Lingtian to obtain first place in the dynasty martial competition. After all, Zishang had relied on his secret technique and revealed a strength that caused them to shudder in fear. Yet now, Duan Lingtian had relied on a secret technique to execute a skill that caused them to feel shocked, so hope had once more arisen in their hearts, and they were once again filled with confidence in Duan Lingtian. Secret technique. Of course, many people doubted Duan Lingtian's explanation as well. Is it really such a coincidence? Imperial uncle, do you believe it? The emperor asked the black-clothed old man by his side. The old man shook his head. It's impossible that it's so coincidental, but we're temporarily unable to explain why he was able to cause Bai Hao to hallucinate instantly. Duan Lingtian is too strange. The second prince, Bai He, frowned as he said with a low voice, if he really seized first place in the dynasty martial competition today, then where would our darkened dynasty's imperial family put our face? This doesn't matter. The emperor seemed to be unaffected, and completely disregarded any resentment. No matter who obtains first today, they're the subjects of our darkened dynasty, and they will represent our darkened dynasty to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties 1 year from now. In the first-class spectating area that belonged to the Feng clan. Big brother Duan is so strong. Feng Tianwu returned to her seat while she looked at Duan Lingtian with a gaze of admiration, and her beautiful eyes were filled with tender affection. Young miss, has the betting for the battle between Duan Lingtian and Zisheng started? What are the odds? Elder Kong seemed to be extremely interested in this. HMPH. The members of the imperial family underestimate Big Brother Duan too much. In the battle between Zisheng and Big Brother Duan's rate is 1-3, yet Zisheng's rate is only 3-1. In other words, if a person bet Duan Lingtian would win and placed a single low-grade origin stone, then so long as Duan Lingtian won, besides being able to obtain the origin stone placed as the bet, the person would be able to earn an extra 3 low-grade origin stones. On the other hand, if a person bet that Zisheng would win and placed a bet of 3 low-grade origin stones, then even if Zisheng won, besides reclaiming the origin stones placed initially, the person would only be able to earn a single origin stone. Isn't this very good? So long as Brother Duan wins, the almost 27,000 low-grade origin stones you placed will be able to be multiplied by a few times. Elder Kong smiled and then stood up. This old man wants to go place a bet for fun as well. Elder Kong, how can you play around with Tian Wu and Ling Tian as well? Are you so confident in Ling Tian? Feng Wudao shook his head. In any case, there aren't many origin stones in my possession, so I'll just take it as playing skipping stones with a few origin stones. Elder Kong shrugged and spoke indifferently. 711 Chapter 712, Fated Battle. Feng Wudao nodded, and with a raise of his hand, a spatial ring shot at Elder Kong. Help me place a bet on Ling Tian with the 100,000 origin stones in here. 100,000 low-grade origin stones. The corners of Elder Kong's mouth twitched slightly as he received the spatial ring, and he felt slightly speechless. Meanwhile, he really wanted to directly ask a single question. Didn't you say I was playing around? Father, you're placing so many origin stones, aren't you afraid Big Brother Ling Tian will lose? Feng Tianwu was shocked by Feng Wudao's extravagance. If that kid dares to lose, then I won't marry my treasured daughter to him, said Feng Wudao indifferently. Father, what are you talking about? Feng Tianwu's beautiful face blushed, and she lowered her head as she spoke in embarrassment. Duan Lingtian naturally didn't know about the situation on the first-class spectating area that belonged to the Feng clan, nor did he know that Feng Wudao had placed 100,000 low-grade origin stones on him in the battle between him and Zisheng. If he knew, Duan Lingtian would surely feel even more pressure. Third place in the dynasty martial competition today is obtained by Bai Hao. He has acquired the reward of 20,000 low-grade origin stones. Meanwhile, one of the old men in the sky above the cage battle arena that were in charge of presiding over the martial competition had passed a spatial ring to Bai Hao before announcing. After Bai Hao left, Zisheng flashed out to arrive in the sky above the cage battle arena after a short moment, and he stood in confrontation with Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian, do you need to rest? Zisheng glanced coldly and indifferently at Duan Lingtian as a wisp of disdain arose in the corners of his mouth. So as to avoid that you'll say I won unfairly after I defeat you. Defeat me? Duan Lingtian said indifferently. Zisheng, looks like you're just like before, you're full of confidence towards yourself. I remember that during the battle on the 7-star sword sect's Dubi Peak all those years ago, you seemed to be confident like this, but the outcome was that not only did you lose, you suffered a crushing defeat. HMPH. It's impossible for the miracle that happened that day to repeat itself. Zisheng's face sank when he heard Duan Lingtian mention the past that he couldn't bear to think of, and he grunted coldly. That might not be the case. Duan Lingtian continued. Even though he was already ready to risk everything and intended to directly utilize the soul skill, 1,000 illusions, against Zishang. When he thought of the strange flame brand that appeared between Zishang's brows and caused Zishang's strength to suddenly rise explosively, needless to say, Duan Lingtian was still slightly worried in his heart, worried that at the same time that Zishang's strength improved, Zishang's spiritual force would rise along with it. If Zishang's spiritual force could rise along with it as well, then he would have no confidence in winning, unless a miracle occurred. It could be said that he was gambling in this battle. He was gambling that Zishang's spiritual force would rise along with Zishang's strength. You'll know soon enough. Zishang's gaze was slightly cold as the origin energy on his body raged and leapt about before seeming to transform into a ball of white flames that enveloped him within it, and he didn't have any intention of withdrawing his zither. Looks like you intend to directly execute your secret technique. Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed slightly. You're smart, but unfortunately, you'll lose for sure today. I'll let you know that going against me will be an eternal nightmare for you. Zishang's words were extremely arrogant, and the white clothes on his body fluttered without wind as he prepared to attack at any moment. Meanwhile, a worker of the cage battle arena made an appearance on the first-class spectating area that belonged to the Darkin dynasty's imperial family, and the worker bowed respectfully and reverently to the emperor. What is it? The emperor frowned. Your Majesty, the Feng clan's Lord Wu Dao has placed a bet of 100,000 low-grade origin stone on this final battle. The worker took a deep breath and spoke slowly. 100,000 low-grade origin stones. Instantly, everyone sitting nearby the emperor including the emperor himself was shocked. Yes, the worker nodded. Who did he bet on? The black-clothed old man asked with a frown. Duan Lingtian, said the worker once more. Looks like he's extremely confident of Duan Lingtian, but unfortunately, he's probably going to be disappointed. The black-clothed old man laughed coldly. Imperial uncle, you seem to be extremely confident of Zishang. This Duan Lingtian innately possesses a secret technique to rely on, said the emperor. He was slightly bewildered by the old man's confidence of Zishang. Even though he felt Zishang's chances of winning were greater as well, he didn't have such a great certainty like the old man. Zishang just told me that he isn't afraid of Duan Lingtian's secret technique, said the old man. So that's how it is. The emperor nodded with understanding, and then he revealed a smile. In other words, this battle of Zishang's is practically certain, looks like Feng Wudao is going to bleed this time. At this moment, the gazes of all the spectators in the surroundings of the cage battle arena had descended in unison onto Duan Lingtian and Zishang, who stood in confrontation in the sky above the cage battle arena. Most people waited with bated breaths for the final battle between Duan Lingtian and Zishang. They knew that the battle between Duan Lingtian and Zishang would decide the person that took the first in the dynasty martial competition today. A battle of two young geniuses that possess secret techniques, this battle will surely be extremely interesting. Who do all of you think has the greater chance of winning? I think that Zishang's chances are slightly better. After all, when Zishang attacks, his strength is comparable to a void interpretation stage expert. I think it's more like that Duan Lingtian will win, as his secret technique is extremely strange and impossible to guard against. Most people felt that Zishang's chances of winning were greater, and a few felt that Duan Lingtian's chances were greater. In the sky above the cage battle arena, after a few years, two rivals had encountered each other once more and stood on the stage of battle. The last time, Duan Lingtian had used his soul skill, 1,000 illusions, to completely crush Zishang and cause Zishang to flee. What would the outcome be today? At this moment, not to mention the onlookers, even Duan Lingtian himself didn't dare be sure what the outcome would be. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian noticed that a small black dot had appeared out of thin air between Zishang's brows, and the small black dot was ceaselessly growing bigger. Duan Lingtian, I know that you're capable of relying on your spiritual force to execute an illusory realm soul skill. Besides that, your spiritual force has even attained the second level of the void interpretation stage. Unfortunately for you, after my secret technique is executes, my spiritual force will far surpass yours, and your soul skill will be utterly useless. Suddenly, Zishang's arrogant voice transmission sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian's expression instantly went grim when he heard this voice transmission. Zishang actually knows that I'm capable of executing a soul skill. Moreover, he even knows the level of my spiritual force. How can this be possible? Not to mention Zishang might not be an inscription master. Even if Zishang was an inscription master and was capable of noticing his spiritual force, it would be impossible for Zishang to know that he used a soul skill to defeat Bai Hao. Moreover, Zishang's words seemed as if he even knew the specific use of his soul skill. At this moment, Duan Lingtian felt a chill run down his spine, and he had the feeling as if he was completely exposed before Zishang. This feeling caused him to feel extremely uncomfortable. "You, how do you know this?" Duan Lingtian took a deep breath and asked in a low voice. "I don't have the obligation to tell you, Duan Lingtian, are bound to be trampled beneath my feet today." Zishang replied indifferently, and as he finished speaking, his tone became even more arrogant, whereas, the small black dot between Zishang's brows was still ceaselessly enlarging, and it have already possessed the outline of the flame brand. "Your secret technique probably requires some time to be executed, right?" Duan Lingtian smiled coldly as his figure flashed out like a bolt of lightning that shot straight towards Zishang without daring to hesitate in the slightest. He wanted to heavily injure and defeat Zishang in one go before the flame brand between Zishang's brows appeared completely. As he flashed out, two dim lights started to flicker within the depths of Duan Lingtian's eyes. Thousand illusions. Instantly, Duan Lingtian's vast spiritual force once again constructed an illusory space that swept towards Zishang and enveloped Zishang, whose flame brand between his brows hadn't completely appeared. When he saw Zishang being enveloped by the illusory space and the illusory space showing no signs of collapsing, Duan Lingtian heaved a sigh of relief. "Looks like there's still time." Duan Lingtian's gaze went slightly cold as abruptly flashed out. Whirlwind. In the blink of an eye, Duan Lingtian had arrived by Zishang's side. His gaze went cold as he punched out explosively, and his origin energy emitted an explosive bang as it fiercely smashed towards Zishang's head. If this punch were to hit its target, then Zishang would at least be heavily injured if he escaped death. At this moment, Duan Lingtian didn't notice that practically the instant he moved, the black dot between Zishang's brows had instantly transformed into a flame brand. When Duan Lingtian flashed to arrive by Zishang's side and the fist he swung out was extremely close to Zishang's head. Zishang moved. Swoosh. Instantly, Zishang vanished on the spot, and when he appeared once more, he was already over 10 meters away, thus this punch of Duan Lingtian's naturally missed. Shit. Practically at the exact same instant, Duan Lingtian's expression went grim. Because he noticed that at the same time Zishang vanished before his punch, the illusory space created by his soul skill had actually collapsed. When gaze descended onto Zishang once again, he instead noticed that the black-colored flame brand between Zishang's brows had already appeared. At this moment, Zishang's eyes were obviously slightly dim, and it seemed as if he was a human puppet that had lost its souls. Zishang wouldn't be possessed by a ghost, right? Duan Lingtian frowned. At the same time, Duan Lingtian noticed that the spatial ring on his hand that was trembling slightly had actually started trembling more intensely at this moment. Obviously, the Devilseal tablet was rising in revolt once more, and it was as if it had taken a stimulant. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath and didn't hesitate to sweep out with his spiritual force with the intention of detecting Zishang's strength. Unfortunately, his spiritual force hadn't even approached Zishang before it seemed as if it collided with cotton before vanishing like a stone that sunk into the ocean. Why is it like this? Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted, and his face darkened. Unfortunately, based on the current circumstances, he didn't have time to think so much because Zishang had already attacked. Swoosh. Zishang flashed directly towards Duan Lingtian with a speed so swift that it caused Duan Lingtian to be slightly unable to react to it. When Duan Lingtian finally reacted, Zishang was already before him. Bang! With a raise of his hand, Zishang's bare fist swept out and brought about a wave of deafening explosions as it smashed towards Duan Lingtian. Sword drawing arts. At this moment, Duan Lingtian only had the time to raise his sword to block Zishang's fist. Bang! The fist smashed onto Duan Lingtian's spirit sword, and it directly shocked the origin energy on the spirit sword to dispersal and caused it to start trembling intensely. It wasn't just that, even the palm of Duan Lingtian's hand that held the sword split open, causing fresh blood to drip down. 712 Chapter 713, without the slightest ability to resist. Fortunately, when Zishang's fist smashed at him, Duan Lingtian slightly eased up his grip on his spirit sword, otherwise, his entire arm would possibly be crippled. A grade 3 spirit sword was capable of staying intact under Zishang's strength, but his arm wasn't. Even if he possessed an extraordinary cultivation, his body was a body of flesh and blood, and he was utterly unable to compare to a spirit weapon. Whoosh! From the moment Duan Lingtian struck out with his sword and was injured by Zishang, only an instant had passed, and the phenomenon of heaven and earth was slowly condensing into form in the sky as well. The 30-plus ancient horned dragon silhouettes weren't able to completely condense info form when Duan Lingtian had already executed his movement technique, Whirlwind, to retreat towards the distance in a sorry state. Even though he stopped the blood flowing from his palm with his origin energy, he still felt his entire arm become numb, causing him to be unable to use the slightest bit of strength. Fourth level of the Void Interpretation Stage. Duan Lingtian couldn't help but gasp as he looked at Zishang, who had a dull gaze and seemed like a puppet. Earlier, when Zishang attacked Bai Hao, he'd suspected that Zishang's strength was at the fourth level of the Void Interpretation Stage or above. Now, after he'd felt it himself, he'd completely confirmed that even though Zishang's fist that shot over like a cannonball only contained origin energy, the strength of the origin energy was comparable to a fourth-level Void Interpretation Stage martial artist. While disregarding spirit weapons and concept, a fourth-level Void Interpretation Stage martial artist possessed the strength of 60 ancient horned dragons solely from origin energy. Such strength was almost double Duan Lingtian's full strength. Instantly, Duan Lingtian felt a wave of powerlessness in his heart. Ha 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 ha, at this moment, within the depths of Zishang's mind, exceedingly arrogant laughter sounded out abruptly yet didn't leave his mouth. If Duan Lingtian heard this laughter, he would surely be able to discern that this laughter belonged to Zishang. Even though Zishang didn't have any control over his body now, he was still capable of seeing everything in the outside world. Elder Ghost, even if you can't kill him, I hope that you can heavily injure him. I want to step on his head and relentlessly humiliate him, so that he'll know the gap between the two of us. Zishang's voice continued to resound out, and it was filled with ruthlessness. Are you ordering me around? The aged and ghastly voice grunted coldly and was extremely displeased. No, I'm requesting it of Elder Ghost. Zishang was instantly in panic. Even though the old man's incomplete soul was unable to occupy his body, the old man was instead capable of directly causing him to become a retard, by way of inflicting self-harm, and that wasn't something he was willing to see. Moreover, to a certain extent, the old man's existence could be considered to be his trump card. This trump card had an extremely great use. Just like now, with his 9th-level Void Initiation Stage spiritual force, he would be utterly unable to resist when facing Duan Lingtian's soul skill. But because of the existence of the old man's incomplete soul, not only had it allowed him to escape calamity, it also allowed him to wantonly crush Duan Lingtian. Even though his body wasn't controlled by him right now, he still felt extremely satisfied, and it was as if the person that crushed Duan Lingtian in all aspects wasn't Elder Ghost, but himself. After his strength rose to the 4th level of the Void Initiation Stage, his spiritual force has risen along with it, and my soul skill is utterly unable to affect him the slightest. With my soul skill being useless, it will also mean that it's extremely unlikely for me to defeat him. Duan Lingtian stared at Zishang, who possessed a pair of listless eyes from afar, and he had a fearful expression. At this moment, Duan Lingtian naturally didn't know that the person controlling Zishang's body wasn't Zishang any longer, and it was instead another extremely terrifying existence. Merely an incomplete soul was capable of allowing Zishang's origin energy and spiritual force that was at the 9th level of the Void Initiation Stage to directly rise to the 4th level of the Void Interpretation Stage. Thousand illusions. The eyes of Duan Lingtian, who refused to believe his soul skill was useless, flickered with a dim light, and he once again executed his soul skill. But unfortunately, his spiritual force had only just constructed a completely new illusory space when it was directly shattered at the instant it came into contact with Zishang. Duan Lingtian's secret technique seems to be useless towards Zishang. A Void Interpretation Stage inscription master that had his spiritual force extended out since the beginning couldn't help but exclaim with surprise. Even though he didn't know what exactly Duan Lingtian's secret technique was. But his spiritual force was capable of noticing that when Duan Lingtian's spiritual force approached Zishang, it would be directly blasted to dispersal, causing Duan Lingtian to be utterly incapable of executing his secret technique. Duan Lingtian's secret technique is useless against Zishang. The words of this inscription master quickly spread out. At the beginning, most of the people only possessed little knowledge of what was going on. In the end, everyone came to a sudden understanding through the explanation of the other inscription masters, and they knew that the secret technique Duan Lingtian executed was closely related to spiritual force. I never imagined that Duan Lingtian is capable of extending out his spiritual force. Looks like he's also an inscription master. Such a monstrous genius in the martial Tao is actually an inscription master as well, his natural talent is truly shocking. Duan Lingtian's secret technique is useless, yet Zishang's secret technique isn't. Looks like this battle is without suspense and Zishang will surely win. The entire cage battle arena was filled with similar discussions, and more than 90% of the people felt that Duan Lingtian would lose for sure. Brother Lingtian is in trouble this time. Elder Kong took a deep breath, and his eyes contained slight fear. Big brother Duan. Feng Tianwu had a worried expression. Only Feng Wudao looked at the scene before him with a calm expression, and he seemed as if it was unrelated to him and didn't have the slightest intention of making a move to help Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian, if you're really unable to go against him, then admit defeat, there's no need to persist. The result of second place in the dynasty martial competition is already not bad. Everyone from the Darkstone Empire sent Duan Lingtian similar voice transmissions. Congratulations Imperial Uncle, you've taken a matchless disciple. The Emperor congratulated the old man by his side. This is the fortune of our darkened dynasty. The old man tried his best to maintain a calm expression, yet his excited gaze had shapelessly betrayed him. You're right, with Zishang's strength, it isn't difficult for him to stand out in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. It's even to the extent that by relying on his secret technique, it's very likely that he can charge into first place in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. When the Emperor spoke up to hear, he had an expression filled with excitement. First place in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. What an honor! The young expert that obtained this honor would also be the #1 young expert in all the 10 dynasties, including the Darkened Dynasty, and the young expert's name would spread throughout the 10 dynasties and go down in history. When he thought of how his personal disciple had the chance of obtaining such an honor, the excitement in the black-clothed old man's eyes grew. If his disciple really obtained the first in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties, then he who was the master would surely become well known in the 10 dynasties and be well known by the later generations. One lived for a single lifetime, thus it should be lived grandly and spectacularly. If he was capable of leaving behind some traces in this world, then even if he died of old age or even transformed into a patch of soul, he wouldn't have any regrets. Big brother. Ziyan's beautiful face was filled adoration as she looked at Zishang, and her delicate fists were clenched tightly from excitement. Why don't I have a secret technique like this to rely on? The Darkened Dynasty's second prince, Bai He, that sat by Ziyan's side stared at Zishang with an expressionless face, yet the depths of his eyes contained boundless envy mixed within. If the people who were comparatively composed in the first-class spectating area that belonged to the imperial family was noted, then it would only be Bai Hao. Even though he'd lost successively at the hands of Duan Lingtian and Zishang, Bai Hao wasn't dejected in the slightest, and he was instead filled with battle intent. He was a person that became stronger as he encountered stronger opponents, and after wandering about the various dynasties during these past few years, he'd become indifferent towards victory and defeat. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to possess such a shocking cultivation at his age. Whoosh! Zishang once again transformed into a white-colored bolt of lightning that arrived before Duan Lingtian in a short moment. Bang! He smashed out with another punch, and his skyrocketing origin energy seemed to have transformed into a dazzling and beautiful flame that carried a wave of ceaseless explosions as it swept towards Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian was utterly unable to dodge in time, and he could only swing out his sword once again while his origin energy skyrocketed beneath his feet, causing the sounds of wind and lightning to explode out as he fled hurriedly. Bang! This time, Zishang's bare fist was like a shooting star that directly blasted the grade 3 spirit sword in Duan Lingtian's hand flying. Swoosh! The palm of Duan Lingtian's hand that held the spirit sword was split open once again, and injury inflicted upon injury caused his entire palm to be dripping with blood. Could it be that I really have to admit defeat? At this moment, Duan Lingtian felt a wave of powerlessness in his heart. The present Zishang was utterly not someone he could deal with, and he'd used all his ability earlier yet was unable to obtain the slightest advantage. A strength comparable to a 4th-level void interpretation stage martial artist was too terrifying. Attacking with the strength of 60 ancient horned dragons was earth-shattering. He didn't have the slightest ability to resist. Admit defeat. Right when Zishang moved once more and transformed into a bolt of lightning that flashed towards Duan Lingtian, a clear voice transmission entered into Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian was able to discern that this was Feng Wudao's voice. Duan Lingtian sighed in his heart, and he opened his mouth with the intention of admitting defeat. Yet right at this moment, the spatial ring that trembled ceaselessly on Duan Lingtian's finger caused him to be unable to refrain from being hesitant. Exactly what's going on with the Devilseal tablet? Why is it restless after the small black dot appeared between Zishang's brows? At this moment, the Devilseal tablet in his spatial ring gave Duan Lingtian the feeling like a hunter that noticed its prey and impatiently wanted to hunt it. Presently, Duan Lingtian had a certain level of understanding towards the pattern of the Devilseal tablet's restlessness. After the small black dot became a black-colored flame brand, the Devilseal tablet became even more restless, and when Zishang attacked him now, the Devilseal tablet seemed as if it was in a frenzy and wildly knocked all around the space within his spatial ring. It wants to come out so badly. In an instant, a mad thought arose within Duan Lingtian's heart. I wonder what terrifying thing will happen if I take out the Devilseal tablet. Duan Lingtian had obtained the Devilseal tablet all those years ago at the Crimson Sky Kingdom's Swamp of Death. He still remembered that the place he obtained the Devilseal tablet was an underground palace. At that time, he almost had his body seized away by a strand of a soul that was sealed within the Devilseal tablet. Fortunately, his soul was comparatively unique and didn't belong to this world, and it was because of this that he escaped calamity. 713 Chapter 714, The Devilseal Tablet's Origins. Since then, Duan Lingtian had kept the Devilseal tablet within his spatial ring. Yet never had he imagined that the Devilseal tablet would suddenly act unusually, especially when the small black dot appeared between Zishang's brows and after the block-colored flame brand appeared. The Devilseal tablet seemed as if it had taken stimulants and was extremely excited. Bang! Zishang arrived before Duan Lingtian, and his bare fist that contained his skyrocketed origin energy swept out once more towards Duan Lingtian. At this instant, even the air seemed to have been sucked out from this area Duan Lingtian was standing at, and at the same time that it caused him to feel extreme pressure, he felt extremely uncomfortable. At a time like this, I can only withdraw the Devilseal tablet and use it as a last resort to save a hopeless situation. I keep having the feeling that something insane will happen. But, it ought to not be targeted at me. When his thoughts spun up to here, Duan Lingtian noticed that Zishang's bare fist was very close by, and it didn't allow him the time to continue pondering. At this instant, Duan Lingtian only had a single thought, and it was to take out the Devilseal tablet and place it before him, as he wanted to see if the Devilseal tablet would be capable of stopping Zishang. Truthfully speaking, Duan Lingtian was still slightly perturbed at this moment. Bang! Practically the instant the Devilseal tablet appeared, Zishang's bare fist had already smashed onto the Devilseal tablet, and it emitted a wave of enormous bangs that were like thunderclaps and instilled fear in the hearts of all. Whoosh, 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 comma. With the point Zishang's punch descended on as the center, the terrifying force gave rise to waves of horrifyingly strong winds that swept out in all directions, and it caused the clothes of many people to flutter. Yet the Devilseal tablet instead lay before Duan Lingtian and floated there without moving in the slightest. When Zishang's punch that contained the strength of 70 ancient horned dragons descended onto the Devilseal tablet, it seemed as if it was scratching an itch for the Devilseal tablet, and not to mention causing any harm, it was even unable to make it move in the slightest. Looks like I've made the right bet. Duan Lingtian was the first to reach to this, and his gaze lit up. The second person to react to this was Feng Wudao. When Feng Wudao saw Duan Lingtian's grade 3 spirit sword being blasted flying by Zishang, and then subsequently saw Zishang make a move against Duan Lingtian once more, he'd already intended to make a move and obstruct Zishang. But right at the instant he intended to make a move, he instead noticed that a broken stone tablet had appeared out of thin air before Duan Lingtian. There was nothing special about this stone tablet. There was a large portion of it missing, and its surface was inscribed with dense words, causing it to seem like a stone tablet that recorded something. But the following scene caused him to be stunned completely. Zishang's bare fist had swept through the sky and smashed onto the broken stone tablet, yet the stone tablet actually didn't move an inch. What stone tablet is this? After he recovered from his shock, Feng Wudao couldn't help but gasp. He felt that after going through half his lifetime, he'd seen many strange people and unusual things, yet it was still the first time he'd seen something so peculiar. The broken stone tablet was obviously not a spirit weapon, yet it easily stopped the attack of Zishang after Zishang had executed his secret technique, and it was truly astonishing. What's that? It seems like a tablet, I don't see anything special about it. There are words on the stone tablet. Do any of you recognize those words? I actually don't recognize a single word on it. There's something strange about this stone tablet. Bull's tea. If there wasn't something strange about it, would it be capable of stopping Zishang's attack and not even move an inch? This broken stone tablet belongs to Duan Lingtian. Could it be Duan Lingtian's trump card? It's possible. Even though this stone tablet looks to be extremely normal, as the saying goes, the highest state is to return to simplicity. I think that it's surely a rare treasure. The topic in the surroundings of the cage battle arena completely twined around the broken stone tablet that had appeared out of thin air before Duan Lingtian. Besides Duan Lingtian and Zishang, everyone else felt that it was unbelievable. All of them were curious about exactly what was the stone tablet that Duan Lingtian had taken out. Seal, Devil Seal, how could the Devil Seal tablet be in your possession? Right at this moment, a ghastly and aged voice muttered with slight panic. Even though the voice wasn't loud, it was still heard by many void interpretation stage martial artists present that possessed deep cultivations. The gazes of these void interpretation stage martial artists descended onto Zishang in unison as the voice had come from Zishang. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian noticed as well that even though the eyes of Zishang who'd lost all reason was still extremely dull, yet Zishang seemed to have suddenly recovered his reason. But this voice doesn't seem like Zishang, right? Right when Duan Lingtian felt extremely bewildered, the scene before him changed suddenly, and it caused him to be dumbstruck. After the Devil Seal tablet was smashed by Zishang's punch, it moved instantly to swiftly fly towards Zishang before fiercely smashing onto Zishang's face without holding back in the slightest. It was as if it was taking revenge for the punch Zishang smashed on it. Bang! An enormous bang sounded out as Zishang was blasted flying by the Devil Seal tablet, causing him to repeatedly spit out a few mouthfuls of blood and have an expression that flickered between an ashen and livid expression, and he seemed to be in an extremely sorry state. What's going on? Duan Lingtian was stunned, and the others were stunned as well. Could anyone tell them exactly what was going on before their eyes? All the spectators including Duan Lingtian didn't have the time to recover from their shock when the Devil Seal tablet whistled out once more, and it smashed onto Zishang once more and blasted him flying. Bang, 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 When facing Zishang, the Devil Seal tablet seemed as if it was tireless as it whistled out repeatedly and repeatedly blasted Zishang flying. During this entire process, Zishang didn't have the slightest ability to resist. Look, quickly. The black-colored flame brand between Zishang's brows is becoming faint. Could it be that it's going to vanish? Could it be that this broken stone tablet of Duan Lingtian's is the bane of Zishang's secret technique? Once the flame brand between Zishang's brows vanishes, his strength will be reduced greatly, and at that time, the one that wins might not be him any longer. This stone tablet is too abnormal. At any rate, Zishang that has executed his secret technique possesses the strength of a void interpretation stage expert, yet it's utterly insufficient before the stone tablet. Yeah, even though Zishang's attacks are strong, yet when it descends onto this stone tablet, it seems as if it's scratching an itch for the stone tablet, and it's utterly unable to make the stone tablet move an inch. The crowd of spectators in the surroundings of the cage battle arena discussed animatedly. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian's gaze descended between the brows of Zishang as well. Along with the Devil Seal tablet completely crushing Zishang, the flame brand between Zishang's brows was gradually dimming down, and it completely vanished in the end. It was as if the flame brand had never appeared. After the black-colored flame brand vanished, Zishang's eyes that were dim and listless had finally recovered the color in them. Whoosh! After the flame brand between Zishang's brows vanished completely, the Devil Seal tablet seemed to have completely lost its target, and it stopped on the stop for a short moment before returning to Duan Lingtian's side in the end. Zishang's secret technique has been undone. Duan Lingtian guessed in his heart. The distant Zishang who'd received heavy injuries and was completely beyond recognition was barely able to use his origin energy to stop the bleeding from his injuries, yet his breathing was extremely rapid. Duan Lingtian actually obtained the Devil Seal tablet. Could it be that he's really my bane? Zishang stared hatefully at Duan Lingtian and silently gnashed his teeth. Elder Ghost, could it be that there's no way to deal with the Devil Seal tablet? Zishang took a deep breath before he communicated with the strand of incomplete soul that was concealed in the depths of his mind. This strand of incomplete soul had emerged from a broken piece of stone that he'd obtained years ago, and according to the owner of the incomplete soul, Ghost Flame, the broken piece of stone was a piece of the Devil Seal tablet, whereas, Ghost Flame was a formidable existence that was suppressed by this piece of the Devil Seal tablet. Ghost Flame has once said that his soul was originally extremely strong, yet it was precisely because he was suppressed by the Devilseal tablet and sealed within it that after lingering on in a steadily worsening condition until today, only a strand of his incomplete soul remained. The Devilseal tablet is only effective against devils, or in other words, devil path cultivators, but so long as the Devilseal tablet is present, it's impossible for me to help you like I have in the past. You can only rely on your own strength to deal with Duan Ling Tian. The ghastly and aged voice sounded out, and within the voice was deep fear mixed within, fear towards the Devilseal tablet. Win by relying on my own strength. The corners of Zishang's mouth twitched. He knew his own limitations. Early on when he found out about Duan Ling Tian's ability to use soul skills and the scope of effective Duan Ling Tian's soul skills, he knew that he would be utterly incapable of defeating Duan Ling Tian without Ghost Flame's help. Besides that, the ghastly and aged voice continued to resound within Zishang's mind. You must not allow Duan Ling Tian to obtain the piece of Devilseal tablet in your possession, no matter what. Otherwise, once the incomplete Devilseal tablet in his possession combines once more with the piece in your possession, and then he finds the last piece of the Devilseal tablet, the complete Devilseal tablet will appear in the world once again. At that time, Devil Path cultivators will greet a calamity once more. As he finished speaking, the aged and ghastly voice was filled with terror. If he possessed the complete Devilseal tablet in his hands today and not an incomplete Devilseal tablet, then even if I hid in the depths of your mind, I would still be annihilated without a doubt. Zishang couldn't help but gasp when he heard this. The complete Devilseal tablet is actually so terrifying. Of course, that Devilseal tablet is a super saint weapon that's on the 10 great saint weapon rankings. The aged and ghastly voice continued. 10 great saint weapon rankings. A super saint weapon. Zishang couldn't help but be shocked, and he only recovered from this shock after a few moments. Even though he knew nothing about the 10 great saint weapon rankings, nor did he know anything about the supreme saint weapon, just hearing it allowed him to know that they weren't simple. How did Duan Ling Tian obtain the Devilseal tablet? Zishang spoke with slight envy and hatred. I don't know, all I know is that because of a certain reason, the Devilseal tablet was divided into 3 a long time ago. Amongst these 3 pieces, the main portion is the incomplete Devilseal tablet in his hands, and the 2 pieces of the Devilseal tablet are only secondary. One of these pieces is within your possession. The ghastly and aged voice spoke once more. 714 Chapter 715, Number 1 in the Dynasty Martial Competition. Don't worry, Elder Ghost. Unless I die, otherwise, it's impossible that the piece of the Devilseal tablet in my possession will be taken away by Duan Ling Tian. Zishang pledged in all seriousness and sincerity. The aged and ghastly voice replied and then said, if it's possible, I hope that you can seize the Devilseal tablet in his possession, even though it's only an incomplete part of the Devilseal tablet, yet the most important portion of the Devilseal tablet is there. How do I seize it? Zishang asked. Even though I don't know for what reason the Devilseal tablet has acknowledged him as its master, but so long as you can kill him, the Devilseal tablet would become something without an owner again. At that time, it might not be impossible to make it acknowledge you as its master with my help. The aged and ghastly voice was faintly excited when it spoke up to hear. Elder Ghost, didn't you say that when my strength arrives at a certain extent in the future, you will pass down a devil path cultivation technique to me and allow me to become a formidable devil path cultivation? Since it's like that, why do I need this Devilseal tablet? Could it be that you want to seal me up? Zishang was slightly puzzled. HMPH. Do you think the Devilseal tablet only has the capability of sealing devils? The aged and ghastly voice continued. As a super saint weapon in the 10 great saint weapon rankings, besides being capable of suppressing and obliterating the souls of devil path cultivations, the Devilseal tablet is also capable of extracting the energy of the devil path cultivators sealed within it, and after the energy is extracted from those devil path cultivators, it would be sealed within the Devilseal tablet. The incomplete Devilseal tablet in that kid's possession is the container used to store the energy of the devil path cultivators that have been obliterated by the Devilseal tablet. If a martial artist that hasn't cultivated a devil path cultivation technique is able to make the Devilseal tablet acknowledge him as its master, then once that martial artist cultivates devil path cultivation techniques in the future, the martial artist will be capable of drawing assistance from the energy of the countless devil path experts sealed within it to cultivate and advance in strength by leaps and bounds. Of course, from then onwards, the Devilseal tablet would completely lose its ability to seal devil path cultivators, because it would gradually be transformed into a devil and completely lose its own ability. When he spoke up to hear, the ghastly and aged voice stopped before continuing. You're extremely fortunate to be able to encounter this incomplete Devilseal tablet before cultivating a Devil Path cultivation method. After all, if it was a Devil Path cultivator that had already cultivated a Devil Path cultivation technique, not only would the cultivator be unable to allow the Devilseal tablet to acknowledge him as its master, he would even encounter a backlash and be sealed by the Devilseal tablet. As he finished speaking, the ghastly and aged voice carried terror that came from the soul. Ghost Flame's words entered completely into Zishang's ears. Yes, I'm extremely fortunate, but it isn't an easy matter to seize the incomplete Devilseal tablet from him. Zishang stared fixedly at the distant Duan Lingtian, and at the depths of his eyes that were filled with ruthlessness was slight fear. Never had he imagined that after many years, he, who thought he would be capable of completely crushing Duan Lingtian, had actually been completely crushed by Duan Lingtian once more. He was extremely disgruntled, but he knew that it was useless. What he had to do now was to seize the incomplete Devilseal tablet in Duan Lingtian's possession, because it affected the advancement of his cultivation in the future. HMPH. If you don't want to be countered and sealed by him with the Devilseal tablet in the future after you've cultivated a Devil Path cultivation technique, then you can go ahead and give up. Elder Ghost's aged and ghastly voice resounded within Zishang's mind, and it caused Zishang's expression to be even more unsightly. I didn't say I would give up. Zishang spoke with a low voice. That's the best. Besides that, I have to remind you that I can't directly interfere in the battle between him and you like I have in the past. The incomplete Devilseal tablet in his possession can counter and suppress me. Elder Ghost continued. So, you can only rely on yourself to deal with him and seize the Devilseal tablet in his possession. Of course, I can't interfere directly, yet I can try my best to help you advance in strength. Not for anything else, but for the sake of killing him and seizing the incomplete Devilseal tablet in his possession. Thank you, Elder Ghost, I'll surely try my best. Zishang took a deep breath and agreed. Don't try your best, but you must kill him. I can tell you that so long as you're capable of making that piece of the Devilseal tablet acknowledge you as its master before you cultivate a Devil Path cultivation technique. Then once you cultivate a Devil Path cultivation technique, your strength will soar into the sky in one go by relying on the energy of the various Devil Path experts that have been sealed within the Devilseal tablet, and it isn't impossible for you to become a leader in the entire Devil Path. Ghost Flame continued tempting Zishang. The facts proved that his temptation was extremely effective. A Devil Path leader. Zishang's eyes flashed as his feelings surged completely. Bang! Suddenly, Zishang felt an enormous force assault his back, and it fiercely descended behind his neck. In the next moment, he felt a wave of dizziness, and he completely lost consciousness. Useless thing. In the depths of Zishang's mind, the aged and ghastly voice was slightly exasperated. Duan Lingtian, Duan Lingtian, Duan Lingtian. At this moment, the surrounding crowd of spectators in the cage battle arena were in a complete uproar, and they ceaselessly shouted Duan Lingtian's name. Presently, Duan Lingtian had just constructed an illusory space and enveloped Zishang with it, and under Zishang's completely unguarded state, he'd gone around to Zishang's back before knocking Zishang out. Without the assistance of Ghost Flame, Zishang was only an ordinary 9th-level Void Initiation stage martial artist, and he was utterly incapable of withstanding Duan Lingtian's soul skill, Thousand Illusions. Whoosh! In the first-class spectating area that belonged solely to the Imperial family, the black-clothed old man flew out to catch Zishang that was knocked out, and he glanced deeply at Duan Lingtian before returning to his seat. Big brother. The old man had just brought Zishang back when Ziyan had moved over to greet them with a worried expression. He's fine, he's just knocked out. The old man shook his head, and then he stretched out his hand to rub Zishang's temple. After a short moment, Zishang moved and woke up in a daze. Ziyan heaved a sigh of relief when she saw this. Master, I'm sorry, I didn't obtain first place. After Zishang woke up, he realized what had happened. Without Ghost Flame possessing his body and solely relying on his 9th-level Void Initiation stage spiritual force, he was utterly incapable of resisting Duan Lingtian's soul skill. Even though he was disgruntled, he knew that he could do nothing about losing at Duan Lingtian's hands. The Devilseal tablet countered Ghost Flame, causing Ghost Flame to be incapable of helping him resist the soul skill, thus he was bound to lose at Duan Lingtian's hands. You don't have to blame yourself. Being able to obtain second in the Dynasty Martial competition today is already extremely good. The old man shook his head and didn't have the slightest intention of blaming Zishang. Yeah, big brother, you're already extremely formidable, said Ziyan as well. No matter how formidable I am, so what about it? Didn't I still lose at Duan Lingtian's hands? Zishang laughed in self-ridicule, and then he looked with a gaze that flickered with cold lights at Duan Lingtian, who stood in the distant sky and was receiving the cheers of the crowd of spectators in the surroundings of the cage battle arena. Kid, it isn't easy for you to seize the incomplete Devilseal tablet in Duan Lingtian's possession with your current strength. I suggest you rely on the strength of the Darken Dynasty's imperial family to make the imperial family seize the incomplete Devilseal tablet in Duan Lingtian's possession for you. Suddenly, Ghost Flame's voice sounded out in Zishang's mind. Relying on another to kill him. Zishang's gaze lit up when he heard this, and then he seemed to have thought of something inside. Elder Ghost, even if exaggerate the ability of the incomplete Devilseal tablet in Duan Lingtian's possession, and even if the greed of the imperial family is aroused to the point of seizing it from Duan Lingtian, aren't we just allowing others to reap the benefit? Zishang wasn't willing to make the effort, yet allow another to reap the benefit. They'll reap the benefit, Ghost Flame said disdainfully. Even if they really reap the benefit, so what about it? If they're unwilling to give you the Devilseal tablet, then you can return to kill them after a few years and annihilate them to reclaim the Devilseal tablet. Even though Duan Lingtian is presently far inferior to the Darken Dynasty's imperial family in terms of strength, but needless to say, his potential is shocking. If the Devilseal tablet is always within his possession, then you might not be capable of seizing it from his possession after a few years have passed. On the other hand, if the Devilseal tablet falls in the hands of the Darken Dynasty's imperial family, with my help, I have complete certainty that you'll possess the strength to crush the Darken Dynasty's imperial family and seize back the Devilseal tablet in a few years. Ghost Flame spoke extremely clearly. The Devilseal tablet being in the hands of the Darken Dynasty's imperial family was much better than it being in Duan Lingtian's possession. Duan Lingtian's potential threat was far greater than the imperial family. Elder Ghost is wise. Zishang wasn't stupid and instantly understood the meaning behind Ghost Flame's words. Don't worry, Elder Ghost, once the martial competition ends today, I'll discuss it with my master and the Emperor. I believe that so long as I exaggerate it properly, they'll surely be interested in the incomplete Devilseal tablet in Duan Lingtian's possession. Zishang's words were filled with confidence. In the sky above the cage battle arena, the Darkstone Empire's young expert, Duan Lingtian, has obtained the first rank in the Dynasty Martial competition of our Darken Dynasty today and will obtain the reward of 50,000 low-grade origin stones. The old man announced directly. Instantly, the spectators in the surroundings of the cage battle arena were in an uproar. Especially the members of the Darkstone Empire grinned from ear to ear. Swish! The other old man directly passed a spatial ring to Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian stretched out his hand to receive it, and after he dripped blood on it to establish ownership and confirmed that there were 50,000 low-grade origin stones within it, he casually put away the spatial ring. The second ranked in the Dynasty Martial competition today is the young genius recommended by our Darken Dynasty's imperial family, Zishang, and he will obtain a prize of 30,000 low-grade origin stones. As for what the old man announced after that, Duan Lingtian didn't pay much attention to it. At this moment, his attention had descended completely onto the broken stone tablet that floated in the air. Now that I think about it, it seems strange that the Devilseal tablet has actually become tied to me. Duan Lingtian's figure flashed to arrive at the second-class spectating area the members of the Darkstone Empire were seated at in the blink of an eye. Whoosh! Practically at the instant Duan Lingtian descended onto the second-class spectating area, the Devilseal tablet appeared by his side and floated in midair like his shadow. Right at this moment, Duan Lingtian felt that there seemed to be a slight and imperceptible connection with him and the Devilseal tablet. This type of connection wasn't unfamiliar to him. Every single time his blood dripped onto a spatial ring and he established ownership of it, he would have this feeling, the feeling of being connected by blood. 715 Chapter 716, Drawing to an End. Could it be that this Devilseal tablet has acknowledged me as its master? A crazy thought arose within Duan Lingtian's head, and it was a thought that even he felt was unbelievable. But when did this Devilseal tablet acknowledge me as its master? This was something that he didn't have the slightest knowledge about. At this moment, even though Duan Lingtian had already returned to the second-class spectating area that everyone from the Darkstone Empire was seated at, the numerous gazes from the surroundings of the cage battle arena were still locked onto him, and locked onto the Devilseal tablet that floated by his side. Even though Duan Lingtian had already obtained the honor of the #1 young expert in the Dynasty Martial competition, the process to obtain this was something that caused the people present to be deeply puzzled, and it was even unbelievable to them. To them, everything that had happened earlier was too peculiar. At the beginning, Duan Lingtian's secret technique had lost its effect, and he was crushed by Zishang's secret technique to the point of being in great peril. Right when everyone thought that Duan Lingtian would be defeated, an unexpected event arose suddenly in the nick of time. Duan Lingtian withdrew a stone tablet that seemed to be extremely ordinary and was even a broken stone tablet, and it seemed as if it was picked up from the roadside. But it was exactly a stone tablet like this that smashed Zishang to the point of submission. Even though Zishang who'd executed his secret technique possessed a formidable strength, yet he was without the slightest strength to resist when facing that stone tablet. Subsequently, everyone saw that along with the black-colored flame brand between Zishang's brows vanishing, the secret technique Zishang executed had lost its effect as well, and that broken stone tablet had returned to Duan Lingtian's side along with the disappearance of the black flame brand. In the end, Zishang, who'd suffered heavy injuries, stood on the spot in a daze. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian had easily went around to Zishang's back before casually chopping out with his palm that was formed into a blade, and he directly knocked Zishang out to claim first in the dynasty martial competition. The Darkened Dynasty's martial competition had ended at this moment. No matter if it was the process or the outcome, all of it had exceeded the expectations of everyone. Originally, everyone was anticipating how interesting the final battle would be, yet no one imagined that the end would be so direct and straightforward. Moreover, it was filled with dramatics. Some people even felt that Duan Lingtian and Zishang had discussed it earlier and were putting on a show for them. Whoosh! When he saw the Devilseal tablet's unusual actions was drawing more and more gazes, Duan Lingtian commanded with his thought and put the Devilseal tablet away in his spatial ring. Duan Lingtian, congratulations! King Yong looked at Duan Lingtian with a face covered in an excited smile, and he'd slightly lost his composure. Even though he was the #1 expert of the Darkstone Empire and was normally extremely solemn, but when he saw Duan Lingtian obtain first in the dynasty martial competition and had brought great honor to the Darkstone Empire, he'd completely disregarded his status. "You've really proven that saying, so long as it's gold, then I'll shine brightly no matter where it goes and not be buried," said Su Li to Duan Lingtian. "Brother Lingtian, looks like I've underestimated you in the past." Shang Ying sighed. Besides Long Yun, all the young geniuses of the Darkstone dynasty had congratulated Duan Lingtian at this moment. Long Yun stared at Duan Lingtian with a flickering gaze, and what he was thinking in his mind was unknown. Our Darkened Dynasty's martial competition has come to an end. 10 young geniuses have obtained the qualifications to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties that's being held a year from now. In the sky above the cage battle arena, an old man announced with a grand voice. Subsequently, the other old man looked at the emperor. "Now, I invite our most respected emperor to say a few words." Whoosh! Practically the instant the old man finished speaking, the emperor had already appeared by his side, and then the emperor looked at the surroundings before saying slowly, "The dynasty martial competition today has given me a great pleasant surprise. The 10 young geniuses that have obtained the qualifications to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties, especially the young geniuses that are ranked at the top, have even caused me to be indescribably shocked. I won't talk much about anything else. All of you 10 young geniuses must gather at the Imperial Palace half a year from now. At that time, I'll personally lead the group to head to the Northern Desert, to watch the competition between the 10 young geniuses of my Darkened Dynasty and the young geniuses of the 9 other dynasties." After he finished saying all this, the emperor's palanquin appeared in the sky above the cage battle arena. After a short moment, the emperor walked into his 8-bearer palanquin and vanished before the eyes of everyone, whereas the remaining people from the imperial family successively left behind him. "Duan Lingtian, let me see if you're capable of protecting it after the imperial family's interest towards the Devilseal tablet in your possession is aroused." Before he left, Zishang glanced coldly at Duan Lingtian before flying by Ziyan's side and following behind the black-clothed old man to leave. Once the members of the imperial family left, many people followed along with them. At the same time, Duan Lingtian noticed that many people were moving towards the spectating area where he was, and their targets had locked onto the group of people from the Darkstone Empire. "Su Li, I'm leaving first." When he saw that things didn't look good, Duan Lingtian bid his farewells to Su Li before fleeing. Swoosh! Su Li hadn't even reacted when Duan Lingtian had already left the second-class spectating area to ascend the first-class spectating area that belonged solely to the Feng clan. In the Feng clan's first-class spectating area, the Feng clan's patriarch and the other higher-ups weren't present any longer, and only Feng Wudao, Feng Tianwu, and Elder Kong remained. Fortunately, I ran quickly. When he saw everyone from the Darkstone Empire, including King Yong, being surrounded by many fervent people, Duan Lingtian slightly rejoiced in his heart. Even though some people noticed that Duan Lingtian had left, yet no one dared follow him. The first-class spectating area wasn't a place that everyone could ascend. Brother Duan, I never expected that there would be a time that you would flee. Elder Kong joked. Duan Lingtian was slightly embarrassed, then he looked at the red-clothed young woman that stood by Feng Wudao's side, and his gaze lit up. Tian Wu, how much did we earn? Feng Tian Wu smiled. Big brother Duan, you should see for yourself. As she spoke, Feng Tian Wu passed a spatial ring to Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian dripped his blood and established ownership of the spatial ring before looking into it with a single thought, and with a glance, he saw the low-grade origin stones that were piled into a mountain within the spirit ring. These low-grade origin stones are at least more than 100,000, right? It was extremely easy for Duan Lingtian to guess this because the reward for the first in the Dynasty Martial competition was 50,000 low-grade origin stones, and the origin stones before his eyes were more than double the amount of the 50,000 low-grade origin stones from before. Over 107,000, said Feng Tianwu with a smile. So much. Duan Lingtian was surprised, then he seemed to have thought of something, and he withdrew and passed over the spatial ring he obtained as reward for obtaining the first in the Dynasty Martial competition to Feng Tianwu. Tianwu, I didn't expect that you would earn so much for me, keep this 50,000 origin stones. But Feng Tianwu didn't move to receive it, and she directly refused. Big brother Duan, I said since the beginning that no matter how much your 5,000 origin stones earns, all of it is yours, I won't ask for it. Duan Lingtian smiled bitterly. But I didn't expect it would be able to earn so much, keep it. Even if you take these 50,000 origin stones, I've still earned more than 100,000 origin stones from the betting. Originally, when his soul skill was unable to affect Zishang in the final battle, Duan Lingtian had already helped No Hope. At that time, he thought of the pile of low-grade origin stones he left with Feng Tianwu, and he felt those origin stones were surely going to be lost. But he never imagined that fate would play such a great joke on him. As soon as the Devil Seal tablet appeared, it directly suppressed an even heavily injured Zishang, allowing him to turn defeat into victory. Big brother Duan, I don't have any lack of origin stones, moreover, my father has already gained a great profit because of you. Feng Tianwu shook her head firmly, and she couldn't help but laugh as she finished speaking. Duan Lingtian had a puzzled expression. Big brother Duan, you probably don't know yet, during the battle between you and Zishang, your rate was 1-3, and my father placed 100,000 low-grade spirit stones on you. Feng Tianwu laughed. At a rate of 1-3, placing a bet of 100,000 origin stones would allow one to earn 300,000 origin stones. Duan Lingtian's face froze when he heard this, and then he cursed. Who set this rate? Isn't he underestimating me too much? Even though I don't know who set this rate, I can be sure that fellow is surely filled with regret now. Elder Kong laughed, and then he shook his head and sighed. The eldest master was much bolder. He directly placed 100,000 origin stones on brother Duan. I only placed 10,000 origin stones. If I knew earlier that you'd win, I'd have placed the other 20,000 origin stones I had. As he finished speaking, Elder Kong was slightly regretful. Grandpa Kong, isn't it because you didn't believe in Big Brother Duan? Feng Tianwu rolled her eyes angrily at Elder Kong, and then she held onto Feng Wudao's arm and started laughing. It's still father that's more confident of Big Brother Duan. I was originally already mentally prepared to lose those 100,000 origin stones. But, Feng Wudao's words caused the smile on Feng Tianwu's face to be completely frozen. In next to no time, Feng Tianwu changed the topic, and her pair of beautiful eyes flickered with curiosity as she looked at Duan Lingtian and asked. Big brother Duan, what was that broken stone tablet that you took out earlier? It seems to not be a spirit weapon. Before Duan Lingtian could open his mouth, Feng Wudai said, we'll speak about it after we go home. Meanwhile, Feng Tianwu noticed that many burning gazes had shot over towards them from the other 7 first-class spectating areas, or more precisely speaking, they were staring at Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian and Feng Wudao's group of 3 soared into the sky and headed towards the Feng clan estate. When they saw Duan Lingtian's figure vanish before their eyes, the peaceful atmosphere on the other 7 first-class spectating areas was broken directly. This son-in-law of Lord Wudao is really extraordinary. Yes, Duan Lingtian looks to be around the age of 25, and his true age surely doesn't exceed 30. He has crushed the group of young geniuses of our darkened dynasty at such an age to obtain the honor of first place in the dynasty martial competition. It's truly a feat that's difficult to come by. According to me, his ranking at the top in the dynasty martial competition was obtained by relying on that broken and mysterious stone tablet, otherwise, he wasn't Zishang's match. I wonder what that stone tablet is. It's actually so terrifying. Many figures that stood amongst the higher ranks of the darkened dynasty discussed animatedly. 716 Chapter 717, Duan Lingtian's Guess. Brother Lingtian's improvement is truly monstrous. Zhang Shouyang stood amongst the group of Zhang clan members as he shook his head and sighed. But his face quickly revealed a heartfelt smile. As Duan Lingtian's friend, he felt happy for Duan Lingtian being able to possess such achievements, whereas, the eyes of the nearby Zhang Shouyang that were suffused with terror gradually returned to normal after Duan Lingtian's figure completely vanished before his eyes. Even if Duan Lingtian can't be made a friend, we absolutely must not become an enemy with him. The Yi clan's patriarch spoke with an exceedingly heavy tone. The Yi clan's eldest master, Yi Xiao, that stood nearby, nodded with deep agreement. As for the Yi clan's second young master, Yi Xiong, that stood nearby, he was already terrified now to the point that his legs shivered. Never had he imagined that Duan Lingtian would actually be able to obtain the honor of first place in the dynasty martial competition. On the other hand, it wasn't long before the words of the Yi clan's patriarch spread through the other 7 first-class spectating areas and caused the group of figures that stood at the peak of the darkened dynasty to deeply agree with it. In next to no time, these words continued to spread out and obtained the approval of everyone. From today onwards, Duan Lingtian, who wasn't a well-known figure, will become a famous figure of our darkened dynasty. A young man from an empire crushed all the top young experts of our darkened dynasty, and his strength is so shocking that it's sufficient to go down in history. Looks like the Darkstone Empire is a good place indeed. I'll go over to take a look in a few days, and perhaps I'll bring my family over to reside there permanently. Even though the spectators in the surroundings of the cage battle arena had already started to disperse, yet the sounds of discussion still rose and fell without end. The topics of discussion of most people revolved around Duan Lingtian. A young man that was shockingly young had obtained first in the dynasty martial competition today, and it had exceeded the expectations of everyone. Along with the group of spectators in the cage battle arena dispersing, it wasn't long before the entire capital of the darkened dynasty was filled with Duan Lingtian's name and deeds. Practically everyone knew that the person who had the honor to win first in the dynasty martial competition held by the darkened dynasty this time was a young expert from the Darkstone Empire. This young genius looked to be around the age of 25 and was shockingly young. Besides that, he was called Duan Lingtian. Right when the entire darkened dynasty's capital was discussing Duan Lingtian himself was cozily drinking tea in the estate with the Feng clan estate. That stone tablet was something I chanced upon in my hometown. When faced with the questions of Feng Wudao, Feng Tianwu, and Elder Kong, Duan Lingtian didn't conceal too much and spoke of the Devilseal tablet's origins. Of course, he didn't mention the formidable soul that appeared from within the Devilseal tablet and attacked him. That soul was so strong that it was even stronger than the rebirth martial emperor, and the reason he was able to fortunately survive was because his soul was comparatively special and didn't belong to this world. The fact of his soul not belonging to this world had always been Duan Lingtian's greatest secret, and even his father, mother, and 2 fiancés didn't know. Thus, so long as it was related to this secret, Duan Lingtian would absolutely not easily divulge it. Even though there's nothing that's an absolute secret in the world, but Duan Lingtian could be sure that so long as he didn't speak of this secret, it would absolutely be impossible for another person to know of it. It was precisely because of this that he'd never intended to share this secret with anyone. So in this way, it's because you saw the words on this stone tablet were special that you kept it? Elder Kong asked. Duan Lingtian nodded, and then he asked. Elder Kong, you're a man with rich knowledge, I wonder if you recognize these words on the Devilseal tablet. As soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, the Devilseal tablet that had a small portion of its body broken appeared by Duan Lingtian's side and floated there. Elder Kong sized up the Devilseal tablet seriously when he heard this. After a short moment, he shook his head. I don't recognize it. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian looked at Feng Wudao and Feng Tianwu, and both of them shook their head and indicated they didn't recognize it. Alas, looks like I can only find someone to identify these words after I head over to the foreign lands in the future. Duan Lingtian sighed intentionally. Elder Kong nodded. The foreign lands are boundlessly vast, and there are numerous experts there that are as many as the clouds. Perhaps there are people with rich knowledge that will recognize these words. Besides that, since this stone tablet is capable of suppressing Zishang after he utilized his secret technique, I presume it isn't an ordinary thing, and it might give Brother Duan many pleasant surprises in the future. Forget about pleasant surprises, I'm most afraid it brings me shock and fear. Duan Lingtian shook his head, and he stared at the Devilseal tablet with a complicated gaze. Even though he didn't know exactly what the Devilseal tablet was, nor did he know the origins of the Devilseal tablet. His encounter in the Swamp of Death all those years ago had allowed him to realize that this Devilseal tablet was exceedingly extraordinary. The Devilseal tablet was actually capable of sealing such a formidable soul within it, and if it wasn't for him letting that formidable soul out, perhaps that formidable soul would still be suppressed within the Devilseal tablet until now. Even a soul that was more formidable than the soul of the rebirthed martial emperor from all those years ago was suppressed within the Devilseal tablet. I can be sure that this Devilseal tablet is absolutely not an ordinary thing. This was something that Duan Lingtian was extremely certain of. This stone tablet isn't simple. Feng Wudao, who hadn't spoken since the beginning, gave a rare comment. At the same time, there was obviously slight fear within Feng Wudao's eyes. Father, have you discerned anything? Feng Tianwu asked curiously. Instantly, Duan Lingtian and Elder Kong looked at Feng Wudao. No, Feng Wudao shook his head. Then you, Feng Wutian was shocked. Intuition, said Feng Wudao. Duan Lingtian felt a wave of speechlessness. He'd originally thought that Feng Wudao had discerned something, yet never had he expected that this word would come out in the end, and it caused him to be slightly disappointed. Uncle Feng, Tian Wu, Elder Kong, I intend to leave the capital tomorrow. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian seemed to have recalled something, and spoke to Feng Wudao's group of 3. Big Brother Duan, we're going to head to the northern desert half a year from now to gather with the young geniuses of the other 9 dynasties and carry out the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. Why are you leaving at a time like this? Feng Wudao asked. Isn't it better to stay in the capital during this half a year of time and improve your strength? Feng Wudao and Elder nodded as both of them agreed with Feng Tianwu's words. Tianwu, if I don't have anything to do, then it's fine for me to stay in the capital, but I'm leaving the capital this time to deal with some things. As Duan Lingtian finished speaking, a cold light flashed within his eyes. At this moment, Duan Lingtian seemed to have transformed into a venomous serpent that lay in ambush, and he would explode out to injure and kill another at any moment. Feng Tianwu's group of 3 were able to sense the killing intent contained within Duan Lingtian's words, and Feng Tianwu couldn't refrain from asking. Big Brother Duan, can you tell me about it? When he saw Feng Tianwu looking at him with a gaze that carried yearning, Duan Lingtian, who originally didn't intend to say anything, sighed and then spoke of the matter of the 7-Star Sword Sect being annihilated a few years ago. The 7-Star Sword Sect? The sect in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom that you mentioned in Phoenix Nest City earlier. Feng Tianwu was stunned. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded, and his eyes had unknowingly been tainted with a wisp of scarlet red, and even his breathing started to speed up. At this moment, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but recall the scenes that occurred at the peak of the 7-Star Sword Sect's Dubi Peak all those years ago. At that time, the members of the Azure Forest Tri-Sect descended in great number, and then they launched a slaughter against the members of the 7-Star Sword Sect, causing the peak of Dubi Peak to flow with rivers of blood and pile corpses into mountains. When he recalled the price the higher-ups of the 7-Star Sword Sect paid for the sake of allowing him to leave, Duan Lingtian took a deep breath as he closed his eyes in pain. Originally, this hatred had already been buried deep within the bottom of his heart, yet they were recalled by him of his own accord today. Because he already possessed the ability to take revenge now. Big Brother Duan, I want to follow you as well, said Feng Tianwu to Duan Lingtian. Tianwu, it's a personal matter of mine. Duan Lingtian knew that Tianwu had good intentions, yet he refused because it wasn't difficult for him to deal with the Azure Forest Tri-Sect with his current strength. But Duan Lingtian hadn't finished speaking when he was interrupted by Feng Tianwu. Big Brother Duan, I don't have anything to do at home at any rate. Just allow me to follow you. It isn't bad to go relax. Duan Lingtian wasn't in time to speak yet when Feng Wudao had already spoken. I'll be following the both of you. Haha, since the eldest master is going, I naturally have to go as well, said Elder Kong. Duan Lingtian smiled bitterly. He knew that this matter could be said to have been fixed. Right when Duan Lingtian was curious why Feng Wudao would take the initiative to follow him back. Feng Wudao spoke once more. Lingtian, while I and Tian Wu follow you back this time, we'll go see your father and mother on the way. It can be considered as an advanced meeting of relatives. Father, what are you talking about? Feng Tianwu's beautiful face blushed when she heard Feng Wudao, and her face seemed as if blood would drip out of it at any moment. Duan Lingtian finally found out the reason Feng Wudao wanted to return to him. It turned out that Feng Wudao's objective was his parents, and that was why he felt something was wrong. Uncle Feng, Tian Wu, Elder Kong, I'll go back and rest first. Duan Lingtian bid his farewells before fleeing. After he returned to his own small courtyard, Duan Lingtian closed himself within his room before withdrawing the Devilseal tablet once more and carefully studying it. I keep having the feeling that the black-colored flame brand between Zishang's brows isn't formed from a secret technique. What secret technique is capable of allowing a 9th-level Void Initiation stage martial artist to improve his origin energy and soul to the 4th level of the Void Interpretation stage in a short amount of time? The most absurd of it all was that its side effect only caused him to lose reason while the secret technique was executed. Could this even be considered as a side effect? Duan Lingtian didn't believe this no matter what. Besides that, when I'd just withdrawn the Devilseal tablet, Zishang who'd executed his secret technique and lose all reason had suddenly spoken instead. The voice at that time was a ghastly and aged voice, and it wasn't Zishang's own voice. Could it be, there's another soul existing within Zishang's body? At the critical moment, that soul is able to control Zishang's body and help him fight his enemies. 717 Chapter 718, Saint Weapon. An amplification of 100%. If Duan Lingtian was an ordinary Void Initiation stage martial artist, it would naturally be impossible that he would think so much. The reason he thought so much and his guess was based on evidence was entirely because he'd fused with the 2 lifetimes worth of memories of the rebirth martial emperor. Moreover, he'd once encountered a formidable soul that wanted to destroy his soul and seize his body. So, no one was clearer about souls seizing another's body than Duan Lingtian. According to the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, if one's soul is sufficiently strong, one can directly destroy the soul of another and occupy the person's body, effectively replacing the person. However, if one's soul had suffered an extremely great blow and only an incomplete soul remained, then it would be difficult to destroy the soul of another and occupy the person's body. But, even though it's impossible to completely occupy the person's body, yet it wasn't a problem to occupy it for a short period of time. When the thought up to here, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but gasp. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that his guess was correct. Besides that, when I encountered the Devilseal tablet all those years ago, there was a formidable soul sealed within it. In other words, the Devilseal tablet is able to seal souls. Whereas when the black-colored flame brand appeared between Zishang's brows, his body was probably instantly occupied by another soul. I was wondering earlier why the Devilseal tablet would be especially restless when the small black dot appeared between Zishang's brows, and it even took the initiative to attack Zishang itself once it left my spatial ring and only stopped attack after the black-colored flame brand between Zishang's brows vanished. Now when I think about it, it fits completely with my guess. The Devilseal tablet was targeting the other soul within Zishang's body, and when that soul temporarily occupied Zishang's body, it would draw the hostility of the Devilseal tablet. Yet once it conceals itself, the Devilseal tablet would be helpless against it. Duan Lingtian's train of thought became gradually clearer. Looks like Zishang's fortuitous encounter is extraordinary indeed. There's actually a formidable soul concealed within his body. According to the rebirth martial emperor's memories, Duan Lingtian knew clearly that besides requiring specific conditions, a soul that was capable of leaving the body must be at the martial emperor stage. In other words, the soul within Zishang's body was once a formidable martial emperor stage expert. That martial emperor stage expert's soul ought to be only a strand of an incomplete soul, otherwise, Zishang's body would have been occupied by it long ago. This was something that Duan Lingtian was completely capable of confirmed. After a mere incomplete soul occupied Zishang's body, it's capable of improving Zishang's strength by 4 levels in a short amount of time, and it even leapt over a stage. Even the rebirth martial emperor might not have been capable of doing this in his prime. Duan Lingtian frowned when he thought of this. According to the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, no matter if it was his first lifetime or his second lifetime, he was the #1 expert that stood at the peak of the Cloud Continent, and no one was a match for him. Perhaps, there are indeed existences that are stronger than the rebirth Martial Emperor in the boundless oceanic area. Moreover, the rebirth Martial Emperor had once guessed that it wouldn't be strange if there were existences that were even stronger than him in the boundless oceanic area. Perhaps, there was no limit in the universe. Standing at the peak of Cloud Continent didn't mean that one stood at the peak of the entire world. Besides Cloud Continent, this world contained the boundless and mysterious oceanic area. Besides the Cloud Continent, many experts were possibly concealed in the depths of the boundless oceanic area. Could it be that the Martial Emperor stage expert in Zishang's body is from the oceanic area outside Cloud Continent? Duan Lingtian guessed once more. Duan Lingtian lay on his bed and gazed at the ceiling, and his gaze flickered. The Devilseal tablet seems to be capable of countering the soul of Martial Emperor stage experts. In this way, so long as the Devilseal tablet is in my possession, the soul of the Martial Emperor stage expert in Zishang's body is unable to help Zishang deal with me. Needless to say, after he confirmed this, Duan Lingtian felt extremely pleased in his heart. Truthfully speaking, even though it exceeded his expectations to have encountered Zishang today, yet he wasn't willing to lose at Zishang's hands. The instant he was about to be defeated at Zishang's hand and withdrew the Devilseal tablet, he felt bitter in his heart because he would be trampled beneath the feet of an opponent he'd defeated in the past. It was a scene that he was unwilling to see, and it caused him to be extremely displeased. Fortunately, he took out the Devilseal tablet in time and turned defeat into victory. In the Imperial Palace, within a beautifully decorated audience hall of a palace. Imperial Uncle, Master and disciple have come to look for me at such a late hour. There's something urgent. The Emperor looked at the black-clothed old man and white-clothed young man that walked into the audience hall as he spoke slowly. I don't know what it is yet, but Zishang said that he'll tell the two of us once he sees you, said the old man. Zishang, have you encountered something that's causing trouble for you? No matter what it is, feel free to speak of it, so long as it's within the ability of the imperial family, I'll surely help you take care of it appropriately. The Emperor spoke warmly to Zishang. Zishang's brows raised. After the dynasty martial competition today, he noticed that most people within the imperial palace had a different attitude when facing him, and these people included the Emperor before him. Of course, he knew that the thing that urged all this was because of the strength and value he revealed during the dynasty martial competition. His world was sufficient for the Emperor to look highly upon him, and cause the imperial family to look highly upon him. Your Majesty, I haven't encountered any difficulty, but it's slightly related to the benefit of the imperial family, so I have to speak of it. Zishang lightly smiled. Related to the benefit of the imperial family. Merely a few words had aroused the interest of the Emperor and the old man. Speak, said the Emperor. Yes, Zishang nodded. Your Majesty, Master, the critical factor that led to Duan Lingtian defeating me today was that broken stone tablet, and I presume both of you noticed that, right? The Emperor and old man nodded in unison. The thing that was most unforgettable to them today was at the instant that Duan Lingtian was about to lose at the hands of Zishang, the scene of him turning defeat into victory. The reason Duan Lingtian was able to turn defeat into victory relied completely on that seemingly normal broken stone tablet. If they didn't see it with their own two eyes, they would be unable to believe that an ordinary stone tablet like that was actually capable of undoing Zishang's secret technique and becoming the critical factor that determined Duan Lingtian's victory. Even now, they were still filled with curiosity towards the stone tablet in Duan Lingtian's possession, curious about exactly what secret was contained with that seemingly ordinary stone tablet. After this battle, they naturally wouldn't naively think that it was only an ordinary stone tablet. What a joke! If it was an ordinary stone tablet, would it be capable of assisting Duan Lingtian to seize first in the dynasty martial competition of the Darken Dynasty? I wonder if your Majesty and Master are interested in knowing the secrets of that stone tablet. Zishang spoke slowly as he aroused the interest of the Emperor and old man. You know about it? The Emperor's eyes lit up and couldn't refrain from asking. Even though the old man didn't speak, yet he stared fixedly at Zishang and was obviously waiting for him to answer. Zishang nodded, and then he said, that's a saint weapon that transcends all spirit weapons. Saint weapons aren't bound by the amount of amplification it provides, and it's mostly targeted towards usage in various aspects. Besides providing an amplification of strength, a saint weapon possesses various extremely profound abilities. Zishang stopped briefly when he spoke up to hear. Saint weapon. The emperor and the old man had a perplexed expression when they heard this, as this was the first time they heard of the existence of a saint weapon. But they heard a single thing clearly, and that was the saint weapon was an existence that transcended above all spirit weapons. Zishang, why do you know all this? The old man asked with a low voice. Zishang said, Master, I presume you're curious about why my strength has risen so quickly as well. Actually, all this is because of a fortuitous encounter I obtained a while ago. Within that fortuitous encounter, I found out about many things I didn't know about in the past, and amongst them included this saint weapon. Fortuitous encounter. The emperor and old man looked at each other in the ear and nodded. They'd guessed since long ago that Zishang was able to possess his current shocking cultivation because of some shocking fortuitous encounter. Otherwise, not to mention surpassing Bai Hao, he even might not be a match for Bai He. What you mean at the broken stone tablet in Duan Ling Tian's possession is actually a saint weapon? The emperor's eyes lit up and his breathing slightly quickened. Yes. Zishang nodded, and then he said, Your Majesty, you've seen the saint weapon in Duan Ling Tian's possession today. Besides being an offensive saint weapon, his saint weapon possessed the ability to counter various secret techniques. It was precisely because of this that I would be defeated by him today. Moreover, if one fuses one's origin energy into a saint weapon, it would normally provide an amplification of 100%, which even surpasses a grade 1 spirit weapon. Zishang finished speaking with a single breath, and slight nervousness was contained within the depths of his eyes. Now, he was waiting for the fish to take the bait. As for if the fist would take the bait or not, he wasn't sure about it, and so he was slightly nervous. Offensive saint weapon, an amplification of 100%. The emperor's pupils couldn't help but constrict when he heard Zishang. Moreover, it possesses the ability to counter various secret techniques. What ability does that Duan Ling Tian possess to actually be able to obtain such a heaven-defying saint weapon? As he finished muttering, the emperor frowned slightly as greed suffused his eyes. Zishang, this matter isn't a joke, are you sure? The old man confirmed a step further. Master, what I said is naturally the truth. Zishang hurriedly replied. Even though the Devil Seal tablet in Duan Ling Tian's possession wasn't complete, but no matter how bad a state it was in, it was still a part of the supreme saint weapon, the Devil Seal tablet, and it wasn't difficult to obtain an amplification of 100% strength when fusing one's origin energy into it. After all, even the small fragment of the Devil Seal tablet in his possession was capable of providing an amplification of 100% so long as he was willing to fuse his origin energy into it. Of course, he didn't dare rashly utilize it when there were many people around. Even if it was a small fragment of a stone tablet, something that provided an amplification of 100% was sufficient to draw the greed of any martial artist. Even though he possessed the help of Ghost Flame, but because of his cultivation being too low, Ghost Flame's assistance to him was limited. So he had no choice but to toss the fragment of the Devil Seal tablet into his spatial ring. 718 Chapter 719, Returning to the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Zishang wasn't worried that the imperial family would expose his lies after they seized the incomplete Devil Seal tablet from Duan Ling Tian. Of course, even though he'd held back on something, everything he did wasn't a lie. Your Majesty, Master, this is what I wanted to tell the both of you today. If our imperial family is able to obtain this saint weapon, then it's entirely beneficial and completely harmless to our imperial family. As he finished speaking, Zishang was slightly excited. Zishang, you've said so much, yet it wouldn't be because you're not resigned to your loss to Duan Ling Tian today and want to use the imperial family to deal with Duan Ling Tian, right? Suddenly, the emperor calmed down and his wise eyes stared at Zishang as he spoke slowly. Zishang doesn't dare. Zishang hurriedly shook his head, and then he added. If your Majesty doesn't believe what I said earlier, then I'm willing to take an oath of tribulation. As he spoke, and before the emperor and his mater recovered from their shock, he'd already pinched open his finger and caused a drop of fresh blood to charge into the sky before vowing in a clear voice. I, Zishang, vow under the 9 heavenly tribulation that if the broken stone tablet in Duan Ling Tian's possession isn't a saint weapon and doesn't possess an amplification of 100%, then I, Zishang, am willing to be blasted to death by the 9 heavenly tribulation. Subsequently, 9 thunderclaps resounded out in the sky above the imperial palace, and it shocked most of the people with the imperial palace. Even the people in the area nearby the imperial palace heard these 9 resounding thunderclaps. For a time, the corner of the capital that the imperial palace was located at was in a complete uproar. So many thunderclaps have resounded out, could it be that it's going to rain? Kid, quickly help mother bring in the clothes that are drying outside. All right. These were voices that sounded out from a slum behind a remote alley nearby the imperial palace, and it belonged to a widow and her son. They were people that occupied the lowest levels of the darkened dynasty, and were only ordinary people that didn't know what those 9 resounding thunderclaps meant. It's the 9-9 heavenly tribulation. Looks like someone in the imperial palace has taken an oath under the 9-9 heavenly tribulation, yet I wonder who it is. Many martial artists guessed the meaning these 9 resounding thunderclaps meant. Not long after, the news of someone in the imperial palace taking an oath under the 9-9 heavenly tribulation spread throughout the entire capital and became known to all. The 9-9 heavenly tribulation was an oath tribulation, and once a person made an oath under it, no one could go against it. Otherwise, that person would be blasted to death by the heavenly tribulation. Within the audience hall, when they saw that after Zishang took an oath under the heavenly tribulation, yet the heavenly tribulation didn't take further action, nor had any intention of punishing Zishang, the emperor and the black-clothed old man completely believed Zishang. Zishang, you return first. Don't tell another person about this matter, including your sister. The old man looked at Zishang and spoke with a solemn expression. Don't worry, master, I know what I should say and what I shouldn't. Zishang pledged sincerely and nodded before turning and leaving the audience hall. When he turned around, a smile of being successful in his scheme appeared on Zishang's face, and his eyes revealed a cold light that seemed to be waiting to swallow his enemies up. You've done well. He'd only just walked out of the audience hall when a ghastly and aged voice started resounding within his mind. Thank you for the praise, Elder Ghost. Zishang hurriedly replied and didn't dare be disrespectful in the slightest. I was able to discern that your master and that darkened dynasty's emperor have already aroused greed towards the incomplete Devilseal tablet in Duan Lingtian's possession. It won't be long before they'll make a move. Ghost Flame continued. Unfortunately, Duan Lingtian can't die at my hand, it's rather regretful. Zishang sighed. HMPH. Ghost Flame said with disdain, even though Duan Lingtian's natural talent and comprehension ability isn't bad, there are many people in the outside world that possess great natural talent and stronger comprehension ability than him. Once you walk out of this little countryside in the future, you'll know how huge the outside world is. Before some genius experts in the outside world, Duan Lingtian is utterly nothing. Ghost Flame spoke slowly. When you recall this moment at that time, you'll really see how laughable you are at this moment. I understand. Zishang nodded, and the regret on his face vanished. Duan Lingtian naturally didn't know of the plot the imperial family was planning against him, and he was currently already sound asleep in the land of dreams. He was about to leave the darkened dynasty and return to the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom tomorrow, and his feelings surged extremely and was utterly unable to calm down to cultivate or comprehend concept. Duan Lingtian slept all the way until the sky lit up before awakening. After he woke up, Duan Lingtian subconsciously took out the Devilseal tablet. I had a dream last night. In the dream, the Devilseal tablet could be used as a spirit weapon. As the saying goes, what you think about in the day, you will dream of at night. I wonder if my dreams can come true. Whoosh. When he thought up to here, Duan Lingtian didn't hesitate to directly fuse his origin energy into the Devilseal tablet. Right at this moment, 12 ancient horned dragon silhouettes coiled down from the sky above Duan Lingtian with an imposing manner that shot into the sky like a rainbow. Along with the Devilseal tablet being enveloped by a layer of origin energy, Duan Lingtian noticed that another 12 ancient horned dragon silhouettes had appeared by the side of the existing 12 ancient horned dragon silhouettes. Duan Lingtian was dumbstruck when he saw this scene. His current actions were just a spur of the moment, and even though he'd dreamed about it yesterday, the dream only told him that the Devilseal tablet could be used as a spirit weapon. It didn't say that when the Devilseal tablet was utilized as a spirit weapon, it was capable of providing an amplification of 100%. An amplification of an entire 100%. This seems so be only capable of being achieved by the quasi-royal grade spirit weapons refined by the rebirth martial emperor all those years ago, right? Duan Lingtian possessed a quasi-royal grade spirit weapon in his possession, and it was the sword that belonged to the white-clothed sword monarch that he obtained in the sword monarch's treasure. That was a quasi-royal grade spirit sword, and it was capable of providing an amplification of an entire 100%, yet now, Duan Lingtian was completely dumbstruck when he noticed the Devilseal tablet in his possession possessed the capability of providing an amplification of 100%. After a short while, he recovered from his shock. Looks like this Devilseal tablet isn't simple. Under his curiosity, Duan Lingtian continued to study the Devilseal tablet, yet he didn't notice anything else after studying it for some time. Big Brother Duan. After an unknown period of time, Feng Tianwu's voice sounded out from outside his room, and only now did Duan Lingtian put away the Devilseal tablet and wash up before changing into a pair of new clothes and walking out of his room. Tianwu, good morning. After he walked out of his room, Duan Lingtian bathed under the gentle morning sunlight as he lightly smiled and greeted Feng Tianwu, who stood outside the courtyard. Big Brother Duan, let's go have breakfast together. We'll leave after we have breakfast, said Feng Tianwu to Duan Lingtian. Okay. Duan Lingtian nodded. After finishing his breakfast, Duan Lingtian notified Feng Wudao, Feng Tianwu, and Elder Kong before making a trip to the Darkstone estate the members of the Darkstone Empire were staying at. He came over this time mainly to bid his farewells to Su Li and King Yang. After he bid his farewells to King Yang, Duan Lingtian found Su Li. Su Li, I intend to make a trip to the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom and to the Crimson Sky Kingdom. Do you want to follow me? Duan Lingtian had actually only thought to ask this at the last minute. The Crimson Sky Kingdom wasn't only his hometown, but it was also Su Li's hometown. Duan Lingtian originally thought that Su Li would agree, because according to his knowledge, Su Li hadn't returned to the Crimson Sky Kingdom for many years, not to mention catching up with those few good friends from the past. But Su Li had refused instead. Duan Lingtian, I'm not going back for now. I'm going to look for my master in another 2 days, and I will probably be going to wander about the other dynasties for a period of time. Su Li, I presume that when we meet the next time, your strength will surely shock me greatly. Duan Lingtian laughed. As far as he was concerned, it was surely Su Li's master that intended to allow Su Li to increase his strength a step further before the martial competition of the 10 dynasties arrives, and this aroused his intention to bring Su Li around to wander the other dynasties. With Su Li's current cultivation, not to mention competing with the top young geniuses of the various dynasties, there were even many people in the Darkened dynasty that could defeat him. I'm afraid that when we meet the next time, your strength will be even more shocking. Su Li sighed. In the past, along with the numerous times his strength advanced by leaps and bounds, he felt that he ought to be able to surpass Duan Lingtian. But when he saw Duan Lingtian once more and witnessed the strength Duan Lingtian revealed, he instead felt a wave of powerlessness that came from the bottom of his heart. It seemed as if there was an insurmountable chasm between him and Duan Lingtian, and no matter how much effort he put in, he was unable to surmount that chasm to catch up to Duan Lingtian in the end. But he didn't feel frustrated because of this, and it instead caused him to burn with the will to fight. He would surely work hard to chase up and even surpass Duan Lingtian's footsteps before the martial competition of the 10 dynasties started a year from now. This was his goal for the coming year. After you return, send my regards to Tianhu, Xiao Yu, and the others, said Su Li to Duan Lingtian. Of course. Duan Lingtian nodded. Right when Duan Lingtian intended to leave, King Yang called out to Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian, I almost forgot to tell you, Vice Guild Master Shang asked me to tell you that if you're free in the future, you can go catch up with him in the Milky Way City's treasure-gathering pavilion. Okay, Duan Lingtian replied and nodded with a smile to King Yang before leaving the Darkstone estate. In the sky above the Darkened dynasty's capital, swoosh. An enormous sword swept through the sky with an extremely swift speed that was difficult for an ordinary person's eyes to catch. If one were to look carefully, one could notice that this sword wasn't a material sword, and it was instead condensed into form from origin energy. Obviously, someone had intentionally condensed it from his own origin energy to be a mode of transport. After a short moment, the enormous sword left the sky of the capital. On the enormous sword was a layer of a faint origin energy barrier that enveloped the entire enormous sword, and it blocked out the strong winds that assaulted them from ahead. The body of the enormous sword was extremely wide and was capable of accommodating a few tens of people, yet only 4 people were standing on it. This speed is much faster than the 3-eyed flame tiger. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart as he looked at his surroundings. The other 3 people were precisely Feng Wudao, Feng Tianwu, and Elder Kong. Presently, the 4 of them were heading towards the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. The enormous sword beneath their feet was condensed into form from Feng Wudao's origin energy, and its flying speed was so swift that it was comparable to a formidable demon beast at the void interpretation stage. Compared to the 3-eyed flame tiger, it was a many times swifter. 719 Chapter 720, Meeting After Many Years. With the enormous sword's speed, it merely spent almost 10 days of time to pass through the vast Darkstone Empire and enter the territory of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Ling Tian, where are we going now? The enormous sword stopped under Feng Wudao's control as he looked at Duan Ling Tian and asked. We'll first head to the location of the 7-star sword sect, it's over there. Under Duan Ling Tian's guidance, Feng Wudao controlled the enormous sword to head southwest, and it wasn't long before they saw 7 sword peaks that shot into the sky appear before their eyes. The 7 sword peaks were like 7 enormous swords that were pierced into the boundless earth, and they possessed a shocking imposing aura as if they wanted to pierce through the boundless sky. Big brother Duan, this is the 7-star sword sect. Feng Tianwu looked down at the 7 sword peaks and asked. Yes, Duan Ling Tian nodded. He originally thought that he would become depressed at the sight of the 7-star sword sect, but when the 7 great sword peaks appeared before his eyes, his originally surging feelings had instantly calmed down. All his grief seemed to have transformed into boundless hate that ceaselessly accumulated and would explode out at any moment. Uncle Feng, Tian Wu, Elder Kong, I'm going down to go look for 2 people, all of you wait here for me. Duan Ling Tian looked at Feng Wudao and the others as he spoke slowly. Feng Wudao and Elder Kong nodded, whereas, Feng Tianwu said instead, Big brother Duan, I'll follow you over. Duan Ling Tian didn't refuse and brought Feng Tianwu along as he flashed through the sky and plunged down directly towards the peak of Megrez Peak and descended there after a short moment. As he stood at this familiar place, Duan Ling Tian took a deep breath and pressed down his restless mood. Feng Tianwu was able to discern that Duan Ling Tian's feelings were unsteady, and she knew to not say anything as she silently followed by Duan Ling Tian's side, as if she was Duan Ling Tian's shadow. This place was once the place where I cultivated. Duan Ling Tian walked to the side of the peak of Megrez Peak and stood at the precipice as he lowered his head, and his gaze seemed to be able to pass through the clouds and mist to see the familiar tilted tree. Feng Tianwu stood by Duan Ling Tian's side and looked down along with him. After a short moment, she followed Duan Ling Tian to flash down, and only now did he understand why Duan Ling Tian said that his was the place where he once cultivated. It turned out that at the side of this precipice was actually a cave passageway that led into the mountain, whereas, there was a tilted tree at the entrance of this cave passageway. I seem to have already left for an extremely long time. Duan Ling Tian stood on the tilted tree and lightly stroked the branches and leaves on it, and he had a gaze of reminiscence. All those years ago, he'd noticed this place after he'd just joined the 7-star sword sect. It could be said this place had an extraordinary meaning to him, and it even bestowed his extremely monstrous natural talent to him, allowing his cultivation to advance at a tremendous pace. Tilted tree, 10,000-year stalactite milk, Duan Ling Tian slowly closed his eyes. At this moment, he couldn't refrain from recalling the scene when he arrived here all those years ago. He still remembered that when he'd just arrived here, this place only had a single tilted tree, whereas, the cave passageway was instead covered by a layer of stone wall, and it was he who used brute force to break a hole on it. It was precisely because he opened up this wall that he was able to enter the cave passageway and enter the mountain to discover the 10,000-year stalactite milk that allowed him to undergo rebirth. He'd left behind many traces and too many memories here. Duan Ling Tian's spiritual force extended out and he noticed in the first possible moment that there were 2 people cultivating in the stalactite cave within the cave passageway. The auras of these 2 people weren't unfamiliar to him. One of them was the former peak master of the 7-star sword sect's Alcade Peak, Qin Shang, who was the master of his fiancée K'er. The other was Mo Yu, the closed-door disciple of the former sect leader of the 7-star sword sect, Linggu Jinghong. After he noticed the 2 of them, Duan Ling Tian revealed a rare smile on his face. Swish! A wave of wind howls caused by the sky being torn apart swept out from the distant skies, and it grew closer and became deafening. Watch out, big brother Duan! Feng Tianwu's expression went grim. With a wave of her hand, the grade 3 spirit whip Duan Ling Tian refined for her had appeared out of thin air as her origin energy raged into existence, and she was ready to attack at any moment. Duan Ling Tian's brows raised, and he looked towards the direction the approaching howls of wind sounded from to see an exceedingly enormous figure appearing before his eyes. The figure that grew clearer and clearer before his eyes caused Duan Ling Tian's body to tremble slightly, and then his pupils constricted as if he'd seen something unbelievable. On the other side, Feng Tianwu, who was prepared to attack, withdrew her raging origin energy at this moment. The phenomenon of the heaven and earth in the sky that weren't able to condense into form yet had vanished along with this. because she noticed that no matter if it was Duan Lingtian or the figure that had arrived unexpectedly, both of them had no hostility in their eyes after they saw each other. As she looked at the rock that flapped its pair of wings that seemed like clouds that covered the skies, she thought in her heart, "Big brother Duan knows it." In next to no time, she obtained the answer. "Elder Peng." Duan Lingtian was unable to restrain his feelings of excitement any longer. He cried out as his figure flashed out to instant vanish on the spot, and he was already near the rock when he appeared once more. Presently, the rock that had appeared before Duan Lingtian's eyes was precisely the sect guarding revered elder of the former 7-star sword sect, Elder Peng. Never had Duan Lingtian imagined that Elder Peng was actually still alive. All those years ago, after Elder Peng sent him away, Elder Peng had returned without hesitation with the intention of living and dying with the 7-star sword sect. Originally, Duan Lingtian thought that Elder Peng had died along with the higher-ups of the 7-star sword sect under the hands of those old fellows from the Azure Forest Tri-sect, yet never had he imagined that Elder Peng was actually still alive. As he stood in the air before Elder Peng, Duan Lingtian's face was covered in excitement that couldn't be restrained. "Not bad, not bad, I'm actually unable to see through you in the slightest. Looks like your improvement in these past few years was extremely great." When Elder Peng saw Duan Lingtian once more, he was slightly excited and spoke via voice transmission. All those years ago, he and the higher-ups of the 7-star sword sect had arrived at a common agreement to send Duan Lingtian away because they felt that Duan Lingtian was the hope for the 7-star sword sect to rise once more. So all the higher-ups of the 7-star sword sect laid down their lives to open a path for Duan Lingtian to flee, whereas, he'd smoothly sent Duan Lingtian away. "Elder Peng, how did you survive?" Duan Lingtian's feeling gradually calmed down, and he couldn't help but ask. Elder Peng was only a void initiation stage demon beast that was unable to speak out like humans, and he sighed via voice transmission. "On that day, after I sent you off and returned, I instead noticed that everything was already over. There was utterly no point in me making a move, so I concealed myself and waited for the day you returned to help you rebuild the sect." "Elder Peng, your decision was a wise one," said Duan Lingtian. "At the beginning, I was unable to wrap my head around why all our 7-star sword sect's higher-ups would die so quickly under the hands of the Azure Forest Tri-sect. Later on, I found out from little girl Shang that it was Zhao Ming who'd betrayed the sect." When he spoke up to hear, the aged voice in Elder Peng's voice transmission was filled with rage. "After that, I trespassed into the Azure Forest Tri-sect on many occasions and killed both of Zhao Ming's grandchildren successively, but unfortunately, Zhao Ming had always been hiding and didn't make an appearance. Otherwise, even if I had to fight to the death, I'd drag him along with me." At this moment, Duan Lingtian was able to sense Elder Peng's rage, and he shook his head. "Elder Peng, there's no need for you to give up your precious life for a mere Zhao Ming. Even though Zhao Ming is still alive now, it's no different than being dead. All those years ago, Zhao Ming, who was once Elder Ming of the 7-star sword sect, had been deceived into an inscription formation in the Darkstone Empire by Duan Lingtian. During these past few years, unless an expert had interfered, it would be impossible for that Zhao Ming and the other guardian elder of the Azure Forest Tri-sect to escape." Elder Peng's sharp eyes were filled with bewilderment when he heard Duan Lingtian. After Duan Lingtian explained it, Elder Peng came to a sudden understanding, and his sharp eyes were filled with a gratified expression. "You're really not bad. Our decision all those years ago was correct. I was wondering why Zhao Ming had never made an appearance all this time, yet never had I imagined that he'd long since been trapped within that inscription formation you spoke of. If the sect leader in the Netherworld knows this, he would surely be extremely gratified," said Elder Peng via voice transmission. "Elder Peng, have the Azure Forest Tri-sect been making any movements lately? Do you know the reason they annihilated the Mountain Split sect and our 7-star sword sect all those years ago?" Duan Lingtian asked Elder Peng. Duan Lingtian had always been puzzled about the reason the three great sects had joined to form the Azure Forest Tri-sect and successively annihilated the Mountain Split sect and the 7-star sword sect. He didn't know why the three great sects would combine their sects to the point of abandoning their independent inheritances and causing their sects to become history. Elder Peng hadn't spoken yet when a voice broke the short silence. "Senior brother." Suddenly, two figures had appeared on the tilted tree. One was a beautiful woman that was dignified and graceful, and the other was a young man that seemed to be almost 30. Presently, the young man was looking at the nearby Duan Lingtian, who stood in midair with an excited expression, whereas, the beautiful woman revealed a gratified smile as well. The little follow that was filled with glory all those years ago had already grown to the point that even she was unable to see through him now. After so many years, I presume he ought to have already broken through to the first level of the void initiation stage. The beautiful woman was precisely the peak master of the former 7-star sword sect's Alcade Peak, Qin Shang. As far as she was concerned, Duan Lingtian being able to break through to the first level of the void initiation stage now was already an extremely pleasant surprise to her, and she felt the 7-star sword sect had the chance to rise up. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up when he heard this voice, and he turned around to look at the two people that stood on the tilted tree. He greeted Qin Shang, who was the senior first peak master. Besides being the peak master of the former 7-star sword sect's Alcade Peak, Qin Shang was also the master of his fiancée, Kair. Because of this, he'd always been respectful towards Qin Shang. Even today, when his strength had already completely surpassed Qin Shang, he didn't reduce the amount of respect he gave Qin Shang. "You've returned." Qin Shang revealed a warm smile. "Yes, I've returned." Duan Lingtian nodded, and he revealed a smile as his gaze descended onto the young man beside her. "Mo Yu, long time no see, you weren't being lazy during these past few years, right?" After many years, that little fellow from all those years ago had already grown into a man. 720.